somewhere else.
These days, you go down to one of those cheap supermarkets, get a bottle of shampoos for £12.50. It's worth it.
It's worth it.
And do you know,
how else are you going to get through a show?
Fewer calories than a vodka soda.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I like the way you've researched this.
Oh, I know, because I'm putting on some timber with my alcohol
You know
habits,
your bubbles, love, don't you? You know your bubbles.
I know my stuff.
Yeah.
I would say what's coming up on the show, but we're going to run out of time for you to actually tell me. So, do you like Lord Mandelson?
Oh, good old Lord Mandelson. I love the little clip you played as well.
Yeah, he's back. Anyway, into the back tunnel is Ian Collins after this. It's great having your company today. I'll see you on Monday.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, 3 minutes after 1 o'clock. Welcome to the home of common sense. It's snowing behind us, you might have noticed. Coming up on today's programme, the Bank of England warning that the economy is stagnating after Rachel Reeves' budget. God, she only did it half an hour ago. Businesses have responded by raising prices and cutting jobs. We'll look at that in more detail in just a few moments. Also this afternoon, motor agencies have warned Brits this weekend of pre-Christmas panic and record traffic as millions are set to make holiday journeys. Are you on the mooch for the festive season? Tell us more. And the NHS is facing its worst December for flu admissions since 2021 as health leaders warn of a flood of cases worsened by family gatherings in the lead up to Christmas. It ain't pretty out there in the snotty department, apparently. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here At the home of common sense here on Talk, 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. It's our last show before Christmas. Hurrah! Or boo, depending on where you sit on these things. We've got a lot to get through. Will Guyot's here a little later as well, talking tech. Big advice, by the way, for any parent who's buying their kid a smartphone this Christmas. You can't have failed to notice the multifarious debates, TV programmes, columns, all written about the safety of your kid on the browse. What is the best way to protect that? How do you mirror what your kid is looking at? Is it even possible to be 100% sure that they're not having a gander at some iffy fodder online? More of that a little later. And this, I want to talk about Keir Starmer because, frankly, we would be failing like fools if we didn't talk about Keir Starmer. I was genuinely surprised to hear Andrew Bailey talking in such emphatic terms about the budget. This isn't usually an area that you might consider that somebody involved and has been involved at the highest level of finance would be quite so vocal about. But the Bank of England have warned, he's the governor, of course, that the economy is stagnating after Rachel Reeves's budget, as businesses have responded, as you've been hearing, in many ways are not positive, raising prices, cutting jobs. So Andrew Bailey said there would be a gradual approach to cutting interest rates because of concerns over the impact of tax rises and a higher minimum wage. Can I throw this question out, by the way? What is Keir Starmer's biggest failure to date? And I'll open up the lines on this now. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Officials at the bank downgraded their forecasts and so they now expect zero growth in the final months of 2024. Well, we're in the last month of 2024. The next quarter could look dodgy. The Monetary Policy Committee, they're the people that set interest rates, voted to hold them, as you will have seen this week, 4.7%, because there is heightened uncertainty around the economy. We saw inflation rise again. This is now on Starmer's doorstep. There is a lag when you become the next government where you can say, well, blame the other lot. And you can invariably do that for around about maybe a year, but to a lesser degree as each month goes on. Starmer's been there pretty much for half a year now, believe it or not. We're approaching that. Is it a milestone or is it a millstone, depending on how you want to look at it? What's interesting is bearing in mind we've had the winter fuel allowance problem. We've had the farmer problem. We've got the WASPy problem. And they're just the three biggest headlines. If you dig a little deeper, you will find lots of other areas that you think, wow, all in the first 4 or 5 months of being in government. What's interesting is that Keir Starmer said he has no regrets. Pretty much called himself the perfect MP, stating he's got no regrets as his time as Prime Minister. Given what he's been through, what the country have been through, that is extraordinary. Let's have a listen to him then. This is when the Labour MP, he did the liaison committee yesterday, where MPs from different committees can ask a range of questions. So Meg Hillier, we had on the programme many times, Labour MP for Hackney South, asked him about his time in office so far. Here's what Mr Starmer said.
Is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting out now, knowing what you know?
No, we had to do tough stuff. We're getting on with it, and I'm very pleased to be delivering from a position of power rather than going around the division lobbies losing every night. I've had too much of that.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, she said, thank you very much. She should have said, are you for real, mate? Are you for real? No, absolutely, everything is fine. It's really good. It's really, really good. I mean, how delusional does a leader have to be to not even tacitly acknowledge that, there's been a few bumps in the road? He might have just said that, look, not everything I do is going to be popular. I know there are some people, but I promise you the economy is in safe hands. I'm going to do my best for everybody. And yes, of course, there will always be some people who are not enamoured with what I've done. None of that at all. He just straight up, everything's good. Do the same again. Nothing to see here. Winter fuel, farmers, waspies, the list goes on. That's the kind of list you should be able to provide after about 4 years in office, not 4 months in office. These are extraordinary times. The economy is not in great shape. When the Bank of England make a statement like that, you should sit up and listen. What is Starmer's biggest failure to date? I've mentioned some of the obvious stuff. You might want to look a little deeper. To me, I think their biggest failure to date is taking for granted that just being a new set of faces and a new party was going to be enough in itself to bring the British people with you. They came in with this and I promise you, in years to come, students of politics will be writing dissertations on this. Massive landslide, small share of the vote. That it doesn't always follow that it's like that. I mean, there's been times when we've seen similar examples. But the landslide was convincing. That means he can pretty much get all of his business through Parliament. Even if half his own MPs didn't show up to vote, he's pretty much guaranteed to get legislation through. There'll be some agitators. The Lords will do what the Lords do, and one or two of his backbenchers will get the hump. But broadly speaking, he can get that stuff through with ease. If you sprayed his policies with WD-40, it wouldn't get through any easier than it currently will. This is a guy that's a little Teflon plated in that department. But he got a smaller share of the vote. And in the interim, since that election, July the 4th, I think we've seen the stars rise in Reform UK. Have you noticed how much airtime? And this isn't airtime because the media are somehow biased to Reform. They're just making a lot of noise. That's what they're meant to do. More noise than the Conservative Party at the moment. So, yes, of course, people have short memories. In 2 years' time, if everything's tickety-boo, we're all having a holiday in Barbados. We've got ourselves a brand new 4 Cortina and half a Labrador. You might look back and go, hey, yeah, we don't remember. The winter fuel, I've forgotten all about that, mate. That's what he's banking on. I don't think this is going to be like that. So his greatest failure to date for me is taking the electorate for granted across a number of areas. Let's get a word on this and a few of the other big stories of the day. Charlie Rowley is with us, political commentator and all-round nice bloke. Afternoon to you, Charlie, and happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, Ian. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Is that a beard I'm seeing there?
It is.
I only picked that up. I mean, not that people are always interested in one's facial hair, but I picked that up merely because, you know, you're looking rather dashing, frankly.
Well, I try every day with either facial hair or general all-round fashion to look like
me.
You.
I know, I get it. Lots of people aspire to this great level, Charlie. Very few reach it, but I sense you're in touching distance, which is the main thing. Well, let's have a look at what is going on. I just mentioned it there, the Governor of the Bank of England, and his assessment on where the economy is at. We know, of course, that Mr Starmer, as we just heard in the little clip we played there, pretty much said there's nothing to see here. But let's have a little listen firstly, Charlie, to Kemi Badenoch questioning Starmer in PMQs on this very matter.
Their ideological budget was designed to milk the private sector and hope nobody would notice. Now his cabinet ministers are all queuing up for public sector bailouts to his tax mess. If he is going to bail out the public sector, then can he tell us this? Does he think it is appropriate, as the Ministry for Housing has done, to approve a 4-day week for councils that is not flexible working, but is actually part-time work for full-time pay?
Questions based on we're actually doing are usually better than fantasy questions made up. Mr Speaker, what did they deliver in 14 years? Low growth, stagnant economy, a disastrous mini-budget, a £22 billion pack. And now she wants to give me advice on running the economy. I don't want to be rude, but no, thank you very much.
And there it is. So she gave it a go, talking about his penchant for a 4-day week for civil servants, Charlie. That's another one to add to the list, I suppose. We're asking that question, what is Starmer's biggest failure to date? How are you reading this, factoring in the comments as well that we heard from the Governor of the Bank of England, which are, you know, I think pretty unprecedented to hear at this level, that somebody like Andrew Bailey would come out very publicly and say what he said.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is unprecedented, but accurate. I think, obviously, the economy and the way in which Labour came into office having pledged not to attack pensioners in any way, and then they took away the winter fuel allowance, one of the first things that they did, where they slammed the Tories, who, yes, absolutely have failures when it comes to immigration, said that they were going to smash the gangs, but ended up just ditching the only deterrent that this country had. And saying all throughout the campaign that they weren't going to put up income tax, national insurance or VAT, and then have put up national insurance on employers who are now clearly struggling, and that's why people are losing their jobs. Businesses can't pay any more tax at the minute. They're feeling the squeeze, and that's clearly impacted on the wider economy. There's nervousness in the markets. That's why people aren't spending as much as they would this Christmas compared to last, and that's why, as I say, businesses are having to trim the fat, and I'm afraid that results in job losses and lack of investment and a stagnated economy.
Indeed, and it's interesting the Rachel Reeves line and Starmer line that, you know, no tax rises on working people, and spectacularly forgetting that, you know, small business owners are working people.
Exactly, and you know, not to mention then anything that's, you know, happened with the farms and family farms. You know, you're now seeing, as I say, the economy you know, apparently not being able to function properly, that can then give compensation to the WASPy women if that's something that was you know, concluded should happen. And it, you know, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a very happy new year when the government still has all these other infrastructure projects that it wants to do, this GB energy thing that doesn't actually produce any energy. We don't quite know where that's going. I just think it's going to be a continued depressing new year, I'm afraid, under this government. But at least.
But it wouldn't change anything. It's worth playing that clip again, Charlie. This is Keir Starmer. He's being questioned by Meg Hillier, a long time, as you know, parliamentarian, very respected voice. She's of the left. She's a Labour MP, asking him that question about his time in office so far. Here it is.
Is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting out now, knowing what you know?
No, we had to do tough stuff. We're getting on with it, and I'm very pleased to be delivering from a position of power rather than going around the division lobbies losing every night. I've had too much of that.
Well, thank you very much.
That's the bit that's funny, Charlie. It's the thank you very much at the end, rather than what you're talking about, mate. You know, you changed nothing, and there it is. No, business as usual.
Well, yes. I mean, because I don't have much of a life these days, Ian, and I did actually watch the Liaison Committee live yesterday afternoon. And it was fascinating because even though that is the committee made up of all the chairs of the select committees that get to quiz the Prime Minister, Meg, as you rightly sort of alluded to, is a Labour MP. And I think she was a bit too keen to not ask him maybe a second time, are you really sure, Prime Minister, there's nothing that you would have changed? No, nothing about the comms, nothing about the communications. Are you sure you would have, you know, in hindsight, really would have, you know, wanted to roll out the winter fuel allowance sort of scrappage that, you know, in the way in which, you know, really, is there nothing that you wouldn't change?
Nothing
at
all.
Was to accept it and move on?
Yeah, I mean, there's all the big ones that we've talked about, the NHS, national insurance rise, the WASPy story, which is going to hang around like a bad smell. There is, of course, winter fuel. There is farmers. The fact that the new ambassador to the United States is a man who previously called the incoming president essentially a white supremacist or something of that order. That's really going to go down well in the Oval Office, isn't it? And then, of course, you know, there's the fact that Sue Gray, as Chief of Staff, lasted about half an hour in the job. I mean, but he doesn't regret anything.
No, it's all going terribly well.
I'd like to live in that world. You know, they used to make documentaries on people who have sort of delusional kind of approaches to things. You'd get Louis Theroux visiting a clinic in Wyoming, talking to American kids who'd been medicated to the level that they were utterly deluded about who they were and what was happening around them. That's the Prime Minister. Louis should be making a doc on this fella. But nothing to see here, Governor, he says, Charlie.
Exactly, yes. No, it's all carry on, stiff upper lip. And look, you know, even the early stories about the donations and the free clothes and...
the free clothes, there's another one for the list.
Exactly, and all the freebies, you know, totally out of touch with, you know, the rest of society when they're feeling a cost of living crisis, having been told on the one hand there's a 22 billion black hole, which again is obviously disputed, but if that's their mantra, if that's the government's mantra, you can't be sort of taking these freebies left, right and centre.
Yeah.
And, you know, the idea that, as I say, that was going on and, you know, as if that was all okay, and the Prime Minister openly said yesterday, yeah, no, I think I wouldn't change anything, just shows you that this guy isn't a politician, is probably not going to, I mean, if it's going on this way, yeah, well, I can't imagine he'll be there for that much longer. They'll try and install Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting, I would have thought, if I was a backbench Labour MP and having my inbox flooded with, you know, constituents worried about whatever other decisions are going to be taken. So I'd be very worried.
Indeed. Charlie, stay with us. Charlie Rowley is with us, former Conservative advisor, political commentator, looking at the big stories of the day. More to come. Stonehenge features in the headline. Who doesn't love us? The mystery of Stonehenge story. What the Court of Appeal have ruled on trans kids, and charging guests to come round to your house at Christmas. It's a fantastic idea. Thieving swines. We'll have more of that in a few moments' time. 0344 499 1000. We're on the back of all of this, and there's so much material here, we're bound to throw out the question, what is Starmer's biggest failure to date? He says he ain't got one. Done nothing right, everything's good. I'd do all the same again, he says. Really? You're mad, fella. You're absolutely bonkers. Lines are open on that. 19 minutes after 1. This is Talk.
Let's get a voice note from Rowan.
Jingle bells, Labour smells, Starmer's flew away. Rayner mentions tax on second homes that you won't even pay. Hey, jingle bells, Labour smells, Lamb is just insane. I can't wait for Trump, Elon and Farage to save the UK. Whee!
Hey, very good, Red. 5, 4, 3. No, forget it. We're not even going to go there. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 23 minutes after 1 o'clock. Charlie Rowley, you are still there, aren't you, Charlie? You haven't got fed up and legged it and had a shave or something?
No, I'm still here.
They're diligently there. It's like you've not moved in that ad break. I love that. I love it. You could have done all sorts in that 3.5 minutes. Let's look at this story. This one's never off the news agenda. The Court of Appeal ruling that kids cannot make gender reassignment treatment decisions without parental involvement. I find it quite funny when we read out headlines like this, because people like you and I and most sensible people would have said, well, of course they can't. Why would a kid be able to say, yes, chop my genitals off? I can make that decision at 12. Of course they can't.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the headline, well, let's take that the other way around, actually. Because of the way the debate has gone for so long, and where there hasn't been the scrutiny of some of these services that are offering advice and support to those who are trans or suffering gender identity crises, or young people wanting to seek help and support, and just being encouraged down a particular route to, become transgender or take beta blockers or whatever is being prescribed at the time by some of those awful institutions that have obviously now been called out for it. Tavistock, for example.
Yeah.
It is now a situation where it is a headline news that, you can't do that unless you get your sort of, parents on side, which should obviously be the common sense norm. Yep. And should have been in there from the start. Now, I'm incredibly sympathetic to those who are trans, because I think actually if you genuinely are born and you think you're born into the wrong body and you want to make changes in your life to just live as you freely do without harming anyone and just abiding by being just who you think you are, then you know what, go for it. And
fair enough.
It can't be easy, but when services lead you down that path without the right therapy, without the right consultation, certainly without parental support, those places need shutting down, and it's right that the courts have ruled in this way.
Spot on, and I think you're right. I think most people, I've always said there's two things going on with this sort of what you might call widely the trans debate. Exactly as you've just defined it, Charlie, which is the way that we've approached this for years. There were never debates about this stuff up until about 20 minutes ago, it seems. Just wasn't on the discussion. I've done this job for 20 years, and I can promise you, in 19 of those years, we never ever discussed this issue. It never came up, not once. What then happened was sort of gender ideologists and identitarians of the left sort of pitched up and tried to change the terms of discussion here. And I think that's what's messed this up, not people who just have a desire to live in a different way from their dictated body birth, if you want to call it like that.
Definitely, and it's got to a point, where, as I say, people is one thing, but when you hear stories, and I'm not making this up, and I'm not trying to conflate the two, but it has gone so far where you do have those ideologists and those people perhaps on the left, where you now have kids turning up to school identifying as cats.
Yeah.
As furries, they're called. This is another thing that is taking... And schools are pandering to it.
Oh, they're loving it, because they're too scared to not pander to it in case they get accused of an ism or something. This is just people turning reality on its head. Let's move... We've not got long, Charlie. A couple more stories I really want to get in here. Has the mystery of Stonehenge finally been solved? Maybe the Griswolds need another trip back to further explain its origin. Let's have a look at this.
What the hell is this?
Nobody knows for sure, Russ. Some people think it's a calendar, others think it's an astronomer's tool. A lot of people think this was built by men from outer space.
Oh, Clark, the consensus is that it's an ancient timepiece built by the ancient Druids.
Well, whatever. It's been here a long time.
There it is. That's National Lampoon-style interpretation, but scientists believe Stonehenge was built as a symbol of unification between three distinct regions of Britain. There it is. It's as simple as that, Charlie, apparently.
Yes, apparently. And I think this is before the actual creation and, divide of Wales and Scotland and, regions and nations within the UK. But yes, apparently 2 or 3 individuals, with the help of others, obviously found these regional stones and brought them all together. And it was the first symbol of what we now know as the Union. So it's a historic place to go. And
so Stonehenge is sort of tacitly responsible for Nicola Sturgeon. We can sort of take it that far, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes,
both about as interesting to converse with, which I think is another reasonable point here. And let's just look at this final story as well. A fellow called Richard Carter is charging family and friends £75 each for Christmas dinner due to the cost of living crisis. He's omitting the traditional turkey, instead opting for a prime beef dish, ham starters. Guests will receive a glass of champagne on arrival. A choice of white Burgundy or Spanish red wine will be there. His wife thinks he's gone a bit mad, but is accustomed to his unconventional ideas, and the funds raised will be donated to charity, so we should say that. But is there something in this? I mean, if you invite 15 people, there are lots of families. You've got 15 coming. I was listening to somebody in the gym who had 18 people coming. This was just her family. That's cooking for 18 pounds, cooking a Christmas dinner, 3 courses, and you've really got to lay it on a little bit, even if you go, even if you buy the sort of budget versions of anything. It's an expensive do. Whip out the invoices, that's what I say.
Well, Ian, you're more than welcome at mine for free anytime.
Well, that's very kind, Charlie. Thank you very much.
And I'll get that shopping list of wine that you just read out at Richard's place, whatever that was.
Richard knows how to live, doesn't he? He really does. Well, the sort of umbrella title Spanish wine covers a multitude of potential wine crimes there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, we might leave that one to one side.
Yeah,
but,
as long as he's not got it in the fridge, that's the only thing I would question. Not the red, at least.
Well, exactly. But I think, look, I mean, that's good if that example is money's going to charity. But I think I wouldn't necessarily charge people, even if it was a big group. But I would, you might say on an invitation, please bring a bottle, or please bring, the Yorkshires, or please bring something else to, help out a bit. But most people, I would like to think, do that anyway when they go to a party of some sort.
Yeah, I like to think so. Some people bring I was at a kind of party once, and a fella bought some coffee beans rather than wine or chocolates or something. Bought some coffee beans. I thought it's a bit unconventional. It's all right, but I don't think the people had a coffee grinder, so his beans were surplus to requirements, and there's nothing worse than your beans being surplus to requirements, of course.
No, and I imagine he wasn't invited back again. We've not seen him since.
No, he was chucked out after the first course, frankly. Quite a boring character. What's your plans, Charlie, for Christmas?
Well, I am actually working quite a bit over Christmas and New Year. I do enjoy it because I think it's rather festive to be, and I quite like to be busy over Christmas and hopefully mildly entertaining at times. So I haven't been cast in a pantomime this year, and I haven't been for many years, but I imagine it's sort of being quite similar to that.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm sure Panto beckons for 2025. The Churchill Theatre Bromley are always on the lookout for a new Dame or a Jack or whoever. You could play many parts. Charlie, you're always great when you're on with us. Thank you. Have a happy Christmas as well. And we will speak in the new year. He is Charlie Rowley, former advisor to Michael Gove, political commentator with us on the programme. Pick up on anything we spoke of there as well. I like the Christmas dinner thing. Do you charge people to, and what is acceptable to bring or not bring to, you can't bring a dessert, can you, without arranging with the person whose place it is that you're going to bring a dessert, because the chances are they've already thought of that. So you turn up with a lemon meringue or something, and they're going to go, but what about a gypsy tart? Now, a lot of people don't even know what a gypsy tart is. Gypsy tart is the most, it's full of sugar. It's the most stunning of desserts. You hardly see it these days. Nonetheless, thoughts on that. And, of course, the big question, what is Starmer's biggest failure to date? We'll talk to one former Tory MP and political commentator as well in a couple of moments. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. Our number, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 2522. So yesterday, the Bank of England chose to maintain interest rates at 4.75%. This is due to economic uncertainty, and that was against the backdrop of Andrew Bailey, the governor, saying there would be a gradual approach to cutting interest rates because of concerns over the impact of tax rises and a higher minimum wage. Officials at the bank downgraded their forecast for what they now expect to be zero growth. They say in the final 3 months of 2024, because they sort of retro add this stuff up. So we'll keep an eye on what's going on there. But when you consider that you have a governor who is downgrading growth because of a budget, that makes you question the budget, right? You sort of, hang on a second, we've got a stagnation situation going on here. They have warned the economy is stagnating after that budget. Rising prices, cutting jobs, there's all sorts of other things going on. What is Starmer's biggest failure to date on this one? Let's get a word. In a moment, we'll speak to Andy Williams in, who's it? No, who? Freddie. Oh, sorry. We will speak to Andy. I thought Finn, our producer, said there's no Freddie. I thought, who's Freddie? Are we talking to a Freddie? We're going to talk to an Andy and a James, that's for sure. Andy Williams, the political commentator, is with us. James Sutherland, the former Tory MP, is with us. James, Andy, good afternoon to you both. Nice to have you with us. Let me just get James Sunderland. I can sort of roughly have a guess what you might tell us in a moment. Just get an overview, Andy, from you firstly. If you look at Starmer's first month, it's not really been that pretty, has it? I mean, we can talk about freebie clothes. We can talk about national insurance rises for working people. Promised there wouldn't be, but there's been an industrial scale rise in national insurance for working people. Of course, small business owners massively affected by this. We can talk about winter fuel. We can talk about farmers. We can talk about waspies. I mean, how are you grading Mr. Starmer so far, Andy?
I don't think even the most enthusiastic Labour voter or Labour supporter would say that it's been a brilliant start. I mean, it's very clearly the strategy hasn't been clear, the comms have been poor, and there have been big unforced errors like the winter fuel allowance, where personally, I think the policy is correct, actually, but I think the way it was announced and communicated has gone down extremely badly. I wouldn't have made the same decisions as Rachel Reeves. I actually think the decision she has made that will have the longest tail and the most significant impact is on employer national insurance. And I think that is a real problem. That's going to hit the economy pretty hard.
Yeah. James Sunderland, you are a Tory. You were an MP. You know the land. You know how these things pan out. Even allowing for your oppositional stance on these things, how do you assess where we're at so far? And what would you say is Mr. Starmer's biggest failure to date?
Well, Ian, good afternoon. And Andy, I agree with you. I entered politics for the right reasons. I believe in public service. 26 years in the military. I believe in my country and I believe in the economy. And at the moment, you're not going to grow the economy through measures that stifle the economy. So I'm very worried at the moment. I'm very worried that Labour have made some huge mistakes that are having an impact right now on hiring, on business confidence. Inflation is going up again. It's increasing. A lot of the work that the Conservatives did to repair the economy after COVID, they've been thrown out of the water now. The national insurance situation is really serious. We are already seeing the effect of that with job losses and with hiring not happening. So I'm very worried. And at the moment, aside from the damage being caused by this particular budget, I'm now worried about the next budget and its efforts to attempt to repair the damage caused from the first one. So this is bad news for me.
What do you think, though, James, was the thinking here? I mean, Rachel Reeves, I know she's sort of satirised and lampooned a lot, and there was the whole CV thing. But she's bright. I mean, there's no doubt about that. She's in opposition. She was actually quite effective at some points throughout the years. And I'm going back way before Mr. Starmer was running the party. She's got advisors around her. Mr. Starmer has advisors around her. Plus, they've had all the time in the world to look at what had gone wrong in their eyes with the economy. How did they, particularly with national insurance, how did they achieve such an what must be, by any measure, and Andy kind of alluded to it, it must be one of the greatest own goals in recent political history.
Yeah, look, I play with a straight bat, and I do not believe for 1 second that Labour is setting out to harm the economy. That's not their strategy, that's not their intent. And I believe Labour when they say that they want to make the world a better place for the UK, but it's how you go about doing that. Yeah. And I think these are simple mistakes, and I genuinely believe that these are errors of judgment. The point is, the way that you increase the tax take for the Treasury is by increasing growth, because it is no question at all that a growing economy and the growth and the income that comes from jobs and from wealth is what we need to pay for our public services. There's been a failure to understand that, because ultimately what will happen now is that the tax take will go down because we have fewer people in employment. We have businesses not investing. We have foreign countries not investing in the UK now because inflation is going up. The list goes on. At what point will the IMF be called in? So I think these are bad errors of judgment. I think Rachel Reeves has been badly advised by her people. Yeah. And I think that we're going to see the effect of this with perhaps even recession happening to the UK in 2025.
And Andy, one of the problems, one of the annoying things for politicians is that perception becomes reality quite quickly. And I'm sure if Rachel Reeves was here, she would say, well, look, I know some things look bad, but if you look at what we've done here and if you look at the future projections, yeah, there's a bump in the road. But confidence is key to any economy, of course. And once people get a sniff that there's a spanner in the works, it almost has a self-fulfilling effect, doesn't it? And that's the real danger zone here for Labour.
It can do. And I think I was at the CBI conference not that long ago, about a month ago, and this has been reported a lot, but business leaders really are, I wouldn't say they're fed up with Labour, and I wouldn't say that relationship is broken, but they're really disappointed. And if business leaders are disappointed, and if that relationship between government and the private sector starts to fracture, I think we have a real problem, because the thing the government needs more than anything is for the private sector to be investing in all those areas of the economy where we don't have enough money to invest. And so we really need to get that going. And I can see James agreeing with me there. That's absolutely critical. What I would say, the case for the defence with Rachel Reeves is that our economy has some profound long-term structural problems, and it's going to take time to mend them. So I would say, let's not judge her just yet. Let's see where we are in 3, 4, 5 years down the line.
We played the clip a little earlier from the liaison committee. I'm sure you're aware of it, Andy, where, Mr. Starmer was asked by Meg Hillier, a Labour MP, essentially, anything you regret, would you do things differently? And Mr. Starmer said no. And, if you think of, there is not an unreasonable catalogue of things that you could pick up on and say, this was winter fuel is a good one. We all agree. I've said it for years. The idea that David Cameron's mum needs winter fuel allowance. For some, I don't know why I always picked up on David Cameron's mum. I'm sure she's lovely, and I'm sure she donates a winter fuel allowance to whoever. But people who are very rich. But of course, where the bar has been set or where the line in the sand has been drawn is highly questionable. We can look at what is happening with the farmers. We can look at what is happening with national insurance. The WASPy story. I know it's not of Labour's making, but they made a great noise in opposition about how, don't worry, we've got your back, girls. We'll sort this one out. How much longer can they say we're getting all the bad stuff out the way first and then it's going to get good? That will start to sound very hollow, Andy, very quickly.
It could do. I do think that's the strategy, is take the difficult decisions early and hope that you don't lose the public's confidence completely within the first few months. Now, we could have a discussion about whether or not they have. The other thing I would say, just from a political standpoint, is let's not forget that the Tories are in a real mess. They have 121 MPs. They have a leader who, in my view, is unelectable. And they haven't worked out who they are or what they stand for. That's not to mention the threat from reform. I think there's a serious possibility that the Tories crash to 50 seats at the next election. So there's not a strong opposition either.
That's not an unreasonable point, James, is it? Politics is not just about what the government do, but you absolutely need an effective opposition to keep the government of the day in check. And there is big questions surrounding that at the moment.
I agree to a certain extent. I think politics is crying out for people that have got a solid background. They're credible, they're authentic, they're there for the right reasons. People who are in politics for the right reasons, and we need more people like that. My humble view, of course, also is that populism is growing everywhere across the world. We're seeing populist parties rising to the fore now. So we need to return to competence. We just need a Conservative opposition that are credible, that are competent, that say the right things, that they appeal to the people who should put them back into power in the next election. And Labour, I think, have got two problems at the moment. The first thing is they're making mistakes. They're actually making decisions that are harming the economy and harming the UK and looking silly in the process. But also, of course, Labour are going back on all the promises they made before the election, whether it's winter fuel, whether it's growing energy bills, whether it's WASPy women, a whole catalogue of disastrous decisions that are utterly vexing and frustrating and upsetting those who put them in government in the first place. So they've got a lot of work to do. I just feel that the Conservative Party, they're rebuilding at the moment. There are good people at the party still. There are some really strong characters in Westminster. We just need to be a credible opposition whereby we challenge government, we say things as they are. We do need to fix our borders, fix immigration. We need to do and be very loud on the things that Labour are getting desperately wrong.
There is I mean, just on that specific point, I know this essentially is about Labour and Starmer, but just on that point of what is happening, you know, Andy mentioned, you know, reform lurking in the wings. In fact, they're not even in the wings, they're centre stage at the moment. And I'm not just thinking about, you know, Nigel Farage is a very appetising figure to the media. He's entertaining, quite mesmeric to watch, even if you disagree with everything he says. But then there's people like Rupert Lowe, who seem to be getting headlines almost by the hour at the moment. And I'm not seeing a Conservative MP quite make those same inroads. So, I mean, reform are the real danger here.
Well, as an MP who lost my seat, mainly because of reform, you know, the centre-right vote split. I lost my seat by 700 votes and reform took 7,500. So I'm the direct result of reform's growth in popularity. I mean, I'm a centre-right politician. When I served my country 26 years, I believe in my flag. I believe in borders that we can manage. I believe in defending our country. I mean, I'm absolutely a traditional Conservative. And, you know, my messaging is very similar to what reform is saying at the moment and vice versa. But for as long as reform exists, for as long as reform aren't, you know, joining with the Conservative Party, as long as we're not agreeing and, you know, we'll be divided on the right to the point where Labour could sneak through. Nobody wants that. So I would urge reform, and I'd urge the Conservatives to work together as best they can, not to occupy the same space, and to make sure that we have a credible opposition to remove Labour in 2029.
And on that point, Andy, just a final point from you, if you don't mind. I mean, that's it, isn't it, really? You know, regardless of what Starmer does, that the greatest comfort he can take at the moment is that the opposition is the Conservatives and reform, and that divide, and James just articulated brilliantly what happened in his own seat, and that was reflected in many others across the country. If that pattern continues, then, you know, much like the last election, Labour haven't got to do very much. They've just got to sit back and buy the popcorn.
Well, if only it were that easy. I mean, one thing I don't think the Labour Party are is complacent, because they're very used to losing. They're not used to being in government. It doesn't happen very often. And so I think they're acutely aware of the opportunity and the need to actually, as James said, deliver for people. And this potholes fund that was announced today is the sort of thing that on paper looks like a small intervention, but actually can make a meaningful difference to people's lives. And if Labour can deliver on those fronts, then we'll be in a different place in a few years' time.
There it is. Andy, James, thank you guys. Andy Williams, political commentator, James Sunderland, former Conservative MP, with us on the programme. This was really about Starmer, but there are obvious tangents that are clearly intrinsic to the wider discussion about Labour, their position. That, by the way, is exactly what's going to happen come 2029, unless there's been some kind of pact, and I don't mean a sort of an agreement not to stand in certain seats. This is the Reform Conservative thing. Reform they've outgrown any agreement like that, but I'm talking about joining ranks. The problem with that is a lot of Reform members don't want anything to do with the Conservatives, and there's a lot of Conservative members don't want anything to do with Reform, including many of their sort of One Nation MPs who would think it's a terrible idea. And the upshot of all of that is there's a massive row on the right, and Starmer walks back in to number 10 again in 2029 and possibly in 2033 or 34. That's the state of play. What is Starmer's biggest failure to date? 0344 499 1000.
get a voice note from Rowan.
Jingle bells, labour smells, Starmers flew away. Rainer mentions tax on second homes that you won't even pay. Hey, jingle bells, labour smells, Lamb is just insane. I can't wait for Trump, Elon and for us to save the UK. Whee!
Hey, very good, Red. 5, 4, 3. No, forget it. We're not even going to go there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Claire says, Ian, you said Rachel Reeves was intelligent. Have you had a frontal lobotomy? Try and have a happy Christmas and rest up, won't you? Yes, but then there's a difference between intelligence and being clever. And that is often the big kind of divide that not many politicians are able to have a foot in both camps. When what was interesting, when Rachel Reeves was in opposition, and I remember this, and I'm going to try and find it if I can, but there was I'll locate it at some point during the news. It was an article, I think, written probably in about 2012. It was an interview with Rachel Reeves in 2012 when everybody was having a go at the Tories for austerity under George Osborne, David Cameron. They were outrageous, austerity. And Rachel Reeves has said, well, if I was the Chancellor, I would be going further than this. And that was a big moment, really, because the Labour Party at the time were, of course, you know, they'd sort of turned into the Marxist Party and was squealing all over the place and getting hysterical about austerity, even though Gordon Brown, pre to the 2010 election, had said he would have to do the same thing, as had Nick Clegg. In all of, you may remember, they all talked about we will have to have austerity. There were various arguments about how far you would go, but they all agreed on it. And Rachel Reeves said, I would go further. And she talked a lot about the benefit system as well. So in that respect, she kind of gets it. But, of course, once you get the big job, you're in a different reality. And she worked as an independent... Yes, she was actually an economist, just not for where she said she was or for how long she said she was. But you take the point, I think. This is May in Ayr. How you doing, May?
Oh, I'm fine, thanks.
Good. Christmas parties. Are you throwing one or going to one?
No, we're going to a party night at the Bulgarth. It's a local place in Ayr tomorrow night, and family get together. But I was phoning about the headline I saw earlier: families charging £75 for Christmas dinner.
Yes.
Last year, our friend's son and daughter-in-law charged all the couples £70 a head. So this happened last year.
Wow.
Now both of them are working. He's got a successful business, but his mum and dad are pensioners. Although they're not poor pensioners, I was howling with laughter when that.
They had to, so 140 quid they had to pay.
No, £70 for a couple. So
for the couple. Okay, so
couple,
even so, did anybody? And this wasn't going to charity or anything. They did this with a straight face.
No, they just said it was very costly for the alcohol, and they thought they would just charge. I think they actually only said that when they turned up on the day. So
yeah.
I mean,
oh really? They didn't know they were paying.
No,
that's even worse.
They would actually have taken something along. They're not tight. I mean, they're very, very generous, and they would have gone along with gifts, set the table, crackers, all that.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
all you have to do is say, like, bring your own booze or something, right? That would have solved the problem.
I would have thought. I mean, every year for decades, my family, we always congregated, my sister and my brother-in-laws, and they put on a full brunch every year with drinks for everyone as we give out the presents.
Yeah.
So looking at what's happening, I owe them a fortune, so I hope they don't find out that this is what's happening.
It is expensive, though, isn't it? When you put it all on, and you look at the cost of, if you're getting a nice fresh turkey and all the bits that go with it. Yeah. I mean, it's not like just a basic Sunday roast. It's a bit more than that.
It is, I know, but most people that I know in families over the years, what we've done is someone will do the soup, someone will do the second course, third course, main, cheese board, drinks, that sort of thing.
That's a good idea.
You would never, ever go empty-handed. But to turn up and say, oh, by the way, can I have £70, please, just to cover the drinks?
At what point do you break the news that there's I mean, do you do it before someone's tucked in? Do you wait to the very end and go, well, that's 70 quid, please?
I honestly don't know, because my family would not do that. I can believe that, because people do, don't they? A friend of mine was out for a meal a little while ago. He was on a work thing. He was abroad, and the guy he was with, they went for a meal with sort of 6 other people. So there was him and his mate, well, not his mate, his colleague, and the other people. And at the end of the meal, he offered to pay for the meal. My friend thought, that's very generous. He's going to pay for them. There's 8 of us here. He said, I'll pay for the meal. But then, after the others had gone, he said to my mate, we'll go halves on that. And my mate said, what? He said, yeah. And then, when he got back to his hotel room, he sent him an email with the breakdown of what he had to pay him and his bank details. So people do function in ways you think, surely not. Yeah, well, I've got friends that do that, but they're too generous. They're so kind. And but I would just dump families that would do that. I would just not bother going back.
Absolutely. You do it once.
Needless to say, this year they are going to their daughter.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Go elsewhere. Listen, have a cracking Christmas, May. Lovely to speak with you. Thank you. That's May in air. Let's get a word from Robert in Manchester. We've not got long, Robert. I'm sure you can do it. Keir Starmer, biggest failure to date. What are you thinking?
What am I thinking? Well, just stating, we've had 14 years of you-know-what, and I've come to the conclusion we've got this lot now, and I can only describe them as a 3-ring circus led by an unhinged clown. That'll do.
I like it. Is there anything you've seen in Keir Starmer you thought, God, this guy's good?
Every time he fills my screen, I feel like throwing something at it, and I'm not like that. I can argue logic usually about a thing, and he's just to say that he's a pathological liar. So is Rachel Reeves. She was never charged for plagiarism.
That's true.
To make a budget out, you've got to be clever. And it's 40 billion no.
I know. Well, the national insurance thing is a haunter. Listen, Robert, great point. Thank you for that. We'll continue in a similar vein on the other side of the news. We'll get some detail on those big stories. Chloe Dobbs will join us in a few moments' time. And the central question we've been throwing out, what is Starmer's biggest failure to date? Getting a rich bloke to buy his own clothes could be one of them. But more seriously, not that isn't, you might want to look at national insurance, WASPy women, OAP winter fuel allowance, the plight of the farmers. Man alive, the list goes on. He's only been the leader for about half an hour. More comments on the way from you. You want to get in touch, 0344 499 1000. News at 2, coming next.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon indeed. Yeah, 3 minutes after 2 o'clock right here at the home of Common Sense. Lots to get through in this section. We are talking the Bank of England warning about the economy stagnating after Rachel Reeves' budget. The governor is not happy over there. Businesses have responded to that budget, of course. Rising prices, cutting jobs. Is this what Rachel Reeves had in mind when she talked about growing the economy? More on that as well. And what is Starmer's biggest failure to date? Also this afternoon, motor agencies have warned Brits this weekend of pre-Christmas panic and record traffic as millions are set to make holiday journeys. In fact, you can't imagine millions of your fellow Brits are all going off this weekend. It's quite early as well, isn't it? If you're spending Christmas with a relative in another part of the country, that's a long time to commit to your great Auntie Mo, right? More on that coming up. And the NHS is facing the worst December for flu admissions since 2021 as health leaders warn of a flood of cases worsened by family gatherings in the lead up to Christmas. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Comments from you. Jenny in Oxford says Starmer's biggest mistake so far is displaying lying, hypocritical behaviour, as this means the voters have already stopped listening and believing anything he says. I think that's a really good point. It's also the danger zone, isn't it? That it's all very well saying, well, we're just going to get the bad news out the way first, like there's some grand strategy that they had all of this planned. We'll do that first, and then for the next 4.5 years, we can, just run things and hopefully improve things. But if your image has been so irredeemably tarnished in that time, then you're kind of a little stuffed, really. I don't know how you get around it. One here from Dorothy. In my opinion, everything Starmer has had his grubby hands on has been a failure, but his biggest failure is his narcissistic personality means he will never believe he is responsible for anything going wrong, says Dorothy in East Kilbride. Merry Christmas as well to you, Dorothy. That's it, isn't it? I know that you've got to have, I suppose, they often talk about good business leaders. You've got to be almost psychopathic, not in the sense that you're a serial killer, but you've got to have that same almost lack of empathy approach. Because if you can't divorce sentiment, you never get anything done. So you've got to be tough, you've got to be brutal, and you've got to be able to sleep at night when you've made difficult decisions. And that follows in politics as well. It doesn't matter whether somebody says, I'm a fluffy lefty who cares about people. Remember Starmer, I'll join you on the picket line. He wouldn't go anywhere near a picket line these days. I mean, he's been caught with his metaphoric pants down quite a lot in the last few months. But what is his greatest failure to date? Let's talk about this and a few of the other big stories of the day. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, is back with us. How are you doing, Chloe?
Good, thank you. How are you doing, Ian?
Good, happy Christmas. No Christmas hat, no Christmas jumper, I noticed, Chloe. And I think I have seen you online wearing a hat at some point in the last 3 days.
I know, I should have it on because I always get tons of comments from our viewers when I haven't got it on, like, where's your hat, Chloe? Put it back on. I seem to get in a lot of trouble when it's not on, but I worry sometimes people won't take me seriously when I'm making a really serious point and I've got funny reindeer ears on my head.
You see, that is the problem. I was at a fancy dress party where somebody got very, very angry with somebody over whatever it was. But he was dressed as a court jester as he was getting angry. And you can't... his head was nodding and the bells were chiming as he was getting more animated. It looked ridiculous. You're quite right. It's very hard to get too
well, I
serious.
like the snow in the studio behind you. It looks very realistic.
It's real snow as well, I should say. It's not animated stuff. Let's talk about the Bank of England then. This is a stern warning from the Bank of England. Officials now forecasting zero growth for this section of the year we are in. This was meant to be under the against the backdrop of a party, Chloe, that were going to grow the economy. They weren't going to mess around. They talked about the Conservatives 14 years They were the party that was going to bring in change. What have we got now? Maintained interest rates high. Inflation has risen again. We've got redundancies happening as a result of the national insurance rise. And we've got growing prices in the high street. I don't think that's what Starmer had in mind when he first went for the job at number 10.
No, it's funny how when they started off and before the election, they constantly kept saying growth. It's our top priority. And now they seem to have got a bit quiet about that.
Yes.
Now they've got this new tagline, fixing the foundation, saying, oh, you guys, you've got to wait for the growth because we've got to fix the foundations first. I mean, they're so inconsistent. And I just think, you know, I'm not surprised by this. I am not surprised in the slightest that the Bank of England has come out and said the economy is not going to grow, because who on earth thought that a budget with 40 billion worth of tax rises was going to grow the economy? That's obviously going to shrink the economy, if anything. I mean, these people are deluded. I mean, Rachel Reeves, who, you know, claimed she was an economist but isn't an economist, I think her lack of expertise is certainly starting to show. And, you know, they say, oh, we want to get Britain working, we're going to get everybody who's sat on their bums into the job market, whilst at the same time saying to businesses, oh, you've got to have a way higher minimum wage and you've got to pay more in national insurance, and now people are going to take on less. So you're telling people to go get a job whilst the number of jobs available on the market is going to be reducing because of these rises in minimum wage and national insurance. I mean, their whole plan is just completely full of holes. It's a mess, Ian. It's an absolute mess.
It really is, isn't it? And I was saying just before the news that it's all very well talking about getting the bad news out of the way first, which seems to be another one of their lines. You know, we've got tricky stuff, and then, you know, don't worry, the sunny uplands are just around the corner. Everything's going to be absolutely marvellous as we go through the years. But if you have lost the room, if you've lost trust, that doesn't just come back because of a few positive announcements. And I wonder whether Starmer is kind of irreversibly ruined in the eyes of many.
Yeah, so I think that it can be very powerful for a politician to stick to their guns and say, I don't mind having a dip in my popularity in the short term if I'm pursuing policies that are really going to be great for the country in the long run. I mean, you know, look at Margaret Thatcher, some of the stuff she did that now we say, oh yeah, it was great to privatise companies, now looking back in hindsight. But, you know, at the time she was deeply unpopular, but, you know, she stuck to her guns and she was a strong woman. But if you look at the policies that have made Starmer unpopular, I am not convinced that these are policies that are, you know, fixing the foundations, to use his own words, right? So the really unpopular policies like the winter fuel allowance cut, this tax rate on farmers, you know, if you crunch the numbers, these are not really going to raise that much money. These are not going to transform the economy. So it's not really worth the hit to their approval ratings. They were just sort of ideological policies that have turned out to just be deeply unpopular, and they're not really going to raise much money for the Treasury. So I don't think that his idea that it's all going to be great in the long run is really going to play out how he expects.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting at the liaison committee yesterday where he was asked about, you know, whether he had any regrets, essentially, from a Labour MP, and he said no. And it just didn't sound like a very stylish way to respond to that. You know, he might have said, look, obviously not everything we do everyone's going to agree with. Sometimes decisions are difficult, but, you know, we have a bigger... There was none of that. He didn't sort of give a veneer of decency around this. He essentially said, not me, Gov, I've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, I think that people are really starting to see his selfishness and lack of humility. You saw this with the scandal with all of the Lord Ali donations not all that long ago. It just kept on rumbling on, getting worse and worse, and clearly they had behaved inappropriately. And when he was questioned on it, he just stuck to his guns and insisted that he hadn't done anything wrong and no one had done anything wrong. And I think that was a really bad look on the policy for the inheritance tax for farmers. Clearly, they wanted to crack down on people who buy up farmland who aren't actually farmers, just so they can pass it down inheritance free, which is fair enough. But clearly, they should have thought through the policy and been more careful to make sure people who are actual farmers aren't affected by this. And, you know, as Jeremy Clarkson said in his speech when he went to the farmers' protest, he said to Starmer, do the big thing and just put your hands up and say, look, this was rushed through, we messed it up, we need to amend the policy. But he doesn't have the humility to admit that and change it. So he's sticking to his guns, even though, as I said, Ian, it's not even going to raise that much money for the Treasury.
No,
yet. It's going to potentially kill British farming.
Yeah, but there's lots of problems just like that, you know, and you know, we can sort of have a giggle about the fact that he got a rich bloke to buy his suits, even though he's worth a few quid himself. And the problem I had with that story as well wasn't so much that, you know, a Labour donor said, look, I'll throw you some money towards your wardrobe because I want you to win. That would be fine. The bit that bugged me, Chloe, was that in opposition, we were led to believe Labour Party, they don't know people like this. They don't know these rich characters. That's what the Tories do. The Tories' friends, they've got rich friends. We're just ordinary working people, working class backgrounds. I don't know if you know this, but he was the son of a toolmaker himself, Chloe.
Oh, I've never heard that.
No, it's never been raised, so it's nice to have that exclusive. But that was the mood music. We don't know rich people. We're not like that lot. And, of course, you know, half an hour into power, we discover he's wearing £3,000 suits. Angela Rayner's swanning it up at a big apartment in New York. A load of them have been down to his mansion in Kent for pool parties. I mean, this was just a big lie.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the stuff that the Labour Party, this Labour government have done and said that has got them into hot water wouldn't bother people anywhere near as much if it wasn't the hypocrisy of it, if it wasn't the case that when they were on the opposition benches, they were having a go at the Tories for this stuff. And I have a good feeling that they're going to make themselves like huge hypocrites once again when I would be surprised if they try to push through laws to stop Elon Musk from being able to donate to the Reform Party on this basis of, oh, we don't want rich people having influence over politics and controlling it. After the whole Lord Ali scandal, I mean, they are going to look like total hypocrites if they try to do that.
Absolutely right. Let's move on to the story that is causing I think sort of laughs, giggles all around, and about in Downing Street, because this is the music industry that, of course, has also contributed to the commentary, if you like, on what's happening with Keir Starmer. It's all about one particular song. Let's remind ourselves and have a listen to this.
It'll be freezing this Christmas while our money goes abroad. Rachel Reeves is a fraud. It'll be cold, so cold, without fuel at home this Christmas.
There it is. Well, we spoke to Dean, who's the singer on that track, yesterday on the programme, and it's gaining a lot of traction. The BBC aren't that keen in playing it, it seems, but it's certainly reached number one in the official singles download chart. So I don't know how the BBC can not play it.
I know. I mean, the BBC are really showing their true colours once again by refusing to play this song. I think that it is clear bias. I think they've probably got the idea in their head that it would be biased to play it because it's anti-Keir Starmer, but actually, I'm sorry, but on the radio station you should be playing the music that's popular, that people want to listen to, and if this is top of the charts, then it should be heard. They were given the BBC were given the ability to comment to, I think it was the Telegraph or the Times, and the BBC spokesperson just said, oh, we always play what our target audience wants to hear. We always keep them in mind. Either that's a complete cop-out or that's the BBC admitting that only left-wing people listen to their radio stations, because clearly the vast majority of the public do want to hear this song because it's top of the charts.
Well, I think Heart Radio, and that's your favourite, Chloe, Heart Radio, I think they've played it, so it's had some airtime, but just not over at the BBC, where they're just terrified of it. I mean, it might get played on Have I Got News for You or something like that, but generally speaking, it's almost as if the official number one when it comes to when it comes to downloads is not being aired at all, and that's just mysterious.
Yeah, and I don't know why the BBC does this, because if you ask me, they're just digging themselves a deeper hole, because every time they do something like this, people will kick off and get really angry and say, we don't want the licence fee anymore, and the campaign to get rid of it grows and grows, right? So they're by doing stupid stuff like this, they're putting themselves in a position where they are more likely to lose the licence fee as a source of funding, which, obviously they want to keep that. Yeah. If they actually... I do think the licence fee, regardless of whether they are a biased or unbiased network, is an outdated model. But if it were the case that they were, not messing about like this, there would be nowhere near as many calls for the licence fee to be removed.
Indeed. On that point, Chloe, thank you. Have a great Christmas. Where are you going to be?
You too.
Where are you going to be on Christmas Day?
I actually just came back from an early Christmas up in Yorkshire by the seaside, so I've just come back, and I'll probably just be making a bit of a Christmas meal by myself here in London on Christmas Day.
Oh, that song Freezing at Christmas was based on the track Lonely This Christmas. I hope that's not going to be you, Chloe, although sometimes...
Oh, no, I like my me time, trust me. It's nice to have some peace and quiet.
I'm 100% with you on that. Give me a bottle of red and a bit of munch and I'm fine, I don't... Company can be a hassle, frankly.
As long as I've got a pile of roast potatoes in front of me, I'm very happy.
Spot on. Listen,
better than human company.
Every day of the week. Have a great Christmas, Chloe. Thank you. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, with us on the programme. By the way, David says this is reference, what people do at Christmas Day and, do you charge people to come round to your house? I'm doing what is called a railway lunch. I'm going to charge my guests 50 quid each, but up it by 10% for inflation. Then, at the last minute, cancel everything because the cook didn't turn up on their rest day. Everything will accept this. Everyone will accept this, as we Brits accept anything these days. It's a very good idea. Yes, that's how it runs, isn't it? That's literally how it works. Thank you to David. More coming from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Particularly that question, what is Starmer's biggest failure to date? We'll take more calls on that coming next.
When it comes to family life, you've got to ask, is it for the security of the nation and in the public interest? Well, surely having someone, as we've just seen, who controls 90% of the UK's heroin market is a threat to the country.
You would think.
You would think. So a guy that simply attacked someone with whatever it was at B&Q, I don't think will even reach, the idea that the court will say or will even consider it.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 22 minutes after 2 o'clock. Let's go to your call. Sean's in Northampton. On Keir Starmer, what do you got for us, Sean? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. As far as Keir Starmer, I'd shoot him personally, but...
Well, let's not go that far.
OK, but I think the biggest problem he's making is his communication. I think he's lost touch with the population in this country, that the expectation of the average, the working classes, if you want to use that phrase, is far higher than it was before. And the wage packet now is spread so much thinner. You know, there wasn't things like poll tax. Everybody lived in a council house. You know, when we had industry, we all lived in a council house. I was born and bred and brought up in council houses. The rent was OK, gas was OK, electric was OK. He just doesn't understand now that all these little things they keep putting up are taking, more and more out of a person's pay packet. And literally now, I mean, I've got a good job and lots of pensions, so I'm quite happy. But I've got friends that work really, really hard, and when they've paid the mortgage, paid the poll tax, paid council tax, paid gas and everything else, they've got nothing left. Nothing
what happened? We were talking about this the other day, how did a small independent business in a high street used to survive? Because they did survive. They were there for years. Little pubs or little cafes or, whatever. They were there all over the place. I know the internet wasn't around then.
That changed a lot more when they let supermarkets came along and started selling cheap beer. But I think one of the things that Starmer doesn't understand, I think years ago, when Labour, in their strongest period, a lot of us worked in industry, like where I live in Northamptonshire, everybody worked in the shoe trade, whether it be making cardboard boxes or shoes.
Yeah.
Everybody did. And as long as you got your 3%, as long as you had a good working man's club, as long as you had a good council house, you didn't want any more. That was your aspiration. But them days are over.
Yeah.
And this bloke now is taking more and more and more money off us that work and keeps giving it to all those that don't work. And people are just sick to the teeth. And he's making a mockery of it because he said he'd do the opposite.
That's the problem. And I don't imagine, by the way, though, in fairness, Sean, I don't think that particular aspect of contemporary problems started with Starmer. I think we've seen this over the last years, right?
It's his perception, though. That's what I believe.
Absolutely,
I believe he's so stuck up. I think he's so alien from reality. He just thinks that the working classes should just shut up and put up or whatever he comes out with next. And I'm afraid we're far more educated. We are far more used to using the internet. We're far more informed. We've got bigger aspirations.
Yep.
And them days are gone. So he's either got to get himself sorted or he's gone.
It's a fair point, Sean. Thank you very much indeed. Sean in Northampton. 2:25. Let's go to Mark in Lincolnshire on the same issue. Mark, what's your take on this? Keir Starmer's biggest failures to date.
That's not actually what I rang about.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. All right, what did you ring about? Tell us more.
It was James Sunderland, I think it was.
Yes.
Former MP.
Yeah.
Who describes himself as centre right.
That's right.
I believe that's what he did.
He did.
His problem is, and always will be, because even under Kemi Badenoch it's the exact same situation, the party itself is centre-left, and that's the issue. And that's always going to be the case.
Is it centre-left or is it just centre?
I would say centre-left. It's, and there's too many one-nationers in the party to this date,
And is that because that doesn't any longer reflect Conservative appetites? Because once upon a time that would have been Margaret Thatcher we were talking about.
I don't think... I think the problem is they haven't kept up with the times, have they? Because politics, I've mentioned this in the past, politics is very divisive these days. It's very defined, it's very defined, in so much as you have a left wing and you have a right wing.
True.
I don't think there is any such thing anymore as centre ground. I think you can't be centre ground, because when you're centre ground, you're trying to please both sides at the same time.
But isn't that because you're right? The rule of thumb was always you can't win an election unless you're in the centre. But that...
Yeah, but those... Yeah,
you're saying those days are gone, because the whole key of being a good leader was that you'd bring other people with you, even if they didn't support you. So Blair did it. Remember, Blair hoovered up all those Tory votes because they thought, well, he's not ideally my cup of tea, but I think I can just about, work this guy out. Thatcher did it as well, but that's gone, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely gone. I mean, what I want to see, and I believe millions of other people want to see, is lots of people talk about we need a Trump figure in this country. And they're right to an extent, but what they're really talking about is we need an anti-establishment figure, because where the real problem, I think, has shown its head, has done for probably at least a decade, is the House of Parliament itself. Because, again, what the House of Commons don't seem to get as a whole is that people aren't interested in them anymore. We are absolutely sick and tired of what we see as thieving, lying scumbags. That's how we see them.
But how have we? You know, but I'm genuinely fascinated by this, Mark, because I don't disagree with you. Is it because we incessantly talk about it through social media and programmes like this, whereas before we never did? It's a bit like the cost of living crisis. Families have always been. My mum and dad were always in a cost of living crisis. They never. My sister is still in one. But now everybody talks about it, so everybody kind of analyses and worries and gets angry in maybe ways we didn't do before. We just maybe got on with it, and that same thinking maybe applies to the way we view politicians.
It may well do. I mean, I think personally the biggest change that we've had really is obviously social media. The reason I think it's become such a thing is because we're now in the position where we can actually see their lying, we can see their cheating, we can see the scams that they're running, we can see the, Alex Phillips earlier was talking about the HS2 thing. That's just the same as just one in a long list of things that are just basically Ponzi schemes to fill the pockets of their friends, who they will then go on from the House of Commons, they'll go on and work at their boards, and make even more money. And we can see this now because we can actually gain, we can garner the evidence, we can garner the proof, and we can call them out on it. And this is the whole reason why they're so keen, particularly the Labour Party, who've got such a hard-on for shutting down X. They want to control X because they can essentially control most of social media. You likes of Facebook and all that kind of stuff, Google. They're quite controllable. They're quite left-wing themselves. So they really hate the fact, you've got Elon Musk on the other side, who's obviously got more on the right-wing side of stuff, which is a weird thing anyway, because the guy's always been left-wing. And it was actually the left wing that pushed him to the right, like they did with so many people.
Yeah, no, that's true. He was a Democrat supporter forever.
Yeah, he was.
And wasn't even seen as that political, right? I mean, he was just a businessman. He was a bit sort of... he was a bit of a curious, quirky character, but you sort of need people like that. I'm sure James Dyson's a bit weird as well. There's nothing wrong with that. You kind of need that to get good... those kind of good innovators do come from that part of the human gene pool, which is fantastic. But you're right, that was never Musk before.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I mean, he in I think a few interviews now, when he's been asked what changed for him.
Yeah.
And I think he's always said pretty much the same thing, which was they shouldn't have gone after the kids. That's what tipped him over the edge.
Yeah.
With into leaving the Democrats, because I know he had a lot of trouble with one of his kids, didn't he?
He did, but then the flip side of that is free speech and all the rest of it. We're all great advocates for that, or anyone with a brain should be. But he does own a platform where I can sit on a train, coming into work, where I can watch hardcore porn and decapitation all within half an hour. That would be. I don't search it out, I should just add, but that's a genuine. That's a genuine concern to some people. But but it's always like, it's free speech, anything goes. Edit yourself, right, not the platform.
People are right to be concerned about it, and perhaps there is a case for saying there needs to be a bit stricter control from X's point of view, not from state's point of view. I don't think the states should be involving themselves in this.
No, and I don't like the online harm stuff is really iffy, because if you take that to its now, it's all very well saying, we don't really want decapitation videos, but that's not where the big concern is. The big concern is if you're not allowed to publish an alternative view on something.
Yeah, which is what they use, isn't it? It's like so many things, and again, because of social media, we're able to see how they do this now.
Yeah.
And that's how they will, they'll dress up a policy that they want to bring out that's actually a detriment to the people, but they'll dress it up with things like, it's protecting the kids. Who doesn't want to protect the kids?
Correct.
And if you stand up, as you or I might do, and say, well, no, actually, I don't like this. There's certain aspects of this which infringe on, my ability to have an opinion or whatever. Nothing to do with the sick depraved stuff, but it's to do with, having a political opinion and being a sound off, a point of reference for other people against you. And you'll want to control that. And then they'll then try and turn it around and say, well, what's wrong with you? Do you not want to save the kids? Do you know what I mean? And all this kind of thing. And that's how they kind of push all this stuff through.
Yeah.
But like I say, their big problem is we can see them doing it now. We never could before. And they can't stand it. That's why Starmer's the way he is about X, because he can't stand the fact that there's a platform out there that he can't control, because he can't control Elon Musk.
Has he ever, by the way, has he ever said anything about X? I can't really recall him saying much at all about it.
He's not said anything directly about X, but he has talked about social media before.
Yeah.
And about social media controls and checks and balances and all that kind of garbage. So he always kind of comes out with the same rhetoric, and the Tories have done the same thing as well. It's not just him. It's not just Labour.
No, there's a lot of general support over that, and you've got to be really careful when governments start deciding what, even if they're right on some of it. We don't want the decapitation or the ejaculation videos on there. We get that. But you've got to be really careful what you wish for. Listen, Mark, I've got to move. Thank you. Great call. We could talk on this one forever. There's a lot to it. Thank you to Mark in Lincolnshire. Back to you shortly. 0344 499 1000. The voice of doom. Day 3 is on its way in around about 15 minutes as well. Right now, 2:30. This is Talk.
DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Graham, who says, Starmer's biggest failure for me is allowing himself to become a proven liar on so many levels. Surely he knew that when he said whilst in opposition would be scrutinised when he was PM and would come back to haunt him. If he didn't, he's unfit for office. And do you know what? I don't think they were not as ready for office as... We always have this idea that if you've had years to practice... And I know he's not been running the Labour Party for the whole 14 years, but he has for the last, 4 or whatever it was before the last election, 4 or 5. So he, he was ingrained, and you've got a lot of time to get your ducks in a row. Big advantage over the government, because they're having to do it while you can sit down calculating and working out your plans. And yet I think they've come in just supremely unfit or unready, put it that way. Let's be polite. Just not ready. I don't think they realise the absolute realities of this. And when I look at, Angela Rayner, I look at the sort of various house building, there's another one. Ed Miliband's net zero, I think, which literally nobody I talk to can fully explain what it is. We've got a rough idea. We're going to have a thing called Great British Energy. We won't own any energy. It won't actually provide any energy. It will just be a mechanism where lots of private companies will throw in loads of money and we'll build some windmills. Now, if that works, I'll be the first person to go, wow, that was amazing. Actually, just got a load of people to... that's not going to come at no cost to the taxpayer. Because these things will be underwritten. You'll find big companies will say, yeah, I'll invest, but I want guaranteed return. Yeah, we'll guarantee you return. Don't worry, as long as Ed can get that policy out there. And there is one of the problems. Let's move to this story. As we've been discussing, millions of drivers starting their holiday journeys from today. This is according to motoring organisations warning of pre-Christmas panic as the roads hit record levels of traffic. Data from the RAC and traffic analytics company INRIX estimate 29.3 million journeys will be made by motorists in the run-up to Christmas Day. About half of these, 14.3 million, are set to be made this weekend. Let's speak to everybody's favourite travel man. He's live in Vienna. It's not good night, it's good afternoon, Simon Calder.
Yeah, what a time it is. And it's absolutely beautiful to be in Vienna at this time of the year. Of course, it's Christmas. Everything is going really well here. There's a little bit of congestion involving the beautiful horses and carriages that take people around, but nothing like Frantic Friday in the UK. I've been keeping up to date with what's happening, and my goodness, it's not looking particularly special. We've got massive amounts of traffic, as you were saying, which is particularly going to affect the old friend, the M25, of course. That's on the western side, particularly between the M3 and the M4. After that, the M4 going west out of London towards Bristol. M27 gets a mention, Southampton to Portsmouth, and the M53 from Birkenhead, from Liverpool along to Chester. So that's all looking a bit tricky. And if you're thinking, well, let's catch the train, well, good luck with that. Today's a really good time to travel, except it's going to be extremely busy because from tomorrow, massive shutdowns begin.
Where's everybody going, Simon? Is it just to see your Auntie Maureen, or what's happening there?
But mostly it is. I mean, there's, of course, lots of people trying to leave the country, and that's fantastic for them. It's the busiest day of the year at Heathrow, at Newcastle, at Luton, and at Glasgow airports. It's also going to be very busy on Sunday at the rest, so Gatwick, Stansted, Manchester, and so on. And people are flying off because they want to get some winter warmth. Tenerife, very, very popular. But within the UK, it is just a matter of, we want to get to see family, and what's the least bad time to travel? And there will be people sitting in queues, listening to this, thinking, why am I here? And I'd have to say, well, you're quite right, because it's not a great time to be to be driving any time during the day. Start early, finish late, and that's the way that you will get to have a vaguely civilised journey.
That's the way to do it, isn't it? Is to drive. I once drove, Simon, from London. I was working at the other place at the time. I think you might have been on the show that day. And I had to go up to Manchester afterwards at about 10 o'clock at night. And by the time I hit the M6... especially, the new bit, we call it the new bit of the M6, it's been there for years now, the toll bit. I was the only person on the motorway for miles, and it was an absolute... It's like somebody had built a motorway just for me. The benefits of driving off-peak, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. And really, honestly, if you can get up tomorrow morning at 6 and finish your journey by noon, then you'll miss the worst of it. The RAC says that 1 till 6 tomorrow is going to be worse. And it's around particularly anywhere near a big shopping centre, so Meadowhall in South Yorkshire, Trafford Centre in Manchester, Bluewater in Kent, they're going to be horrible tomorrow. Or start at 7 o'clock tonight. I mean, tonight you've got the usual old commuter traffic and people being a great getaway. So that's all getting very, very tangled indeed. So, yes, just travel where nobody else is. Christmas Day, of course, anybody who's driven on Christmas Day will know that that's not too bad at all.
It's a good day to fly as well. A friend of mine's flying on Christmas Day over to Tenerife, and it's about, I think, between him and his partner, it's about £1,000 cheaper than travelling on Christmas Eve.
And it's much, much more pleasant as well if you can get to the airport. Of course, no trains running anywhere on Christmas Day, but there's lots of coaches going there. And, yeah, much cheaper. And the airports are emptier. Everyone's in a good mood, even though they've got to work. And I would absolutely urge people to do that. It's also my birthday. So I'll tell you what I like to do. Fly somewhere on Christmas Day that's going west, because if you go to New York, say, then you get 5 extra hours of Christmas and your birthday all at once.
Listen, I've known you for about 20 years, Simon. I never knew you were born on Christmas Day.
Well, I was a very, very long time ago.
There you go.
There we are.
Our own little elf, a real elf in Simon Calder. Thank you, Simon. Enjoy Vienna. Safe travelling back as well. I hope you avoid some of that chaos as well. Do you know, I don't know what it is. It's about time moves on. When I was a kid...
Thank you so much.
I didn't know anybody, I don't think, that travelled or went away at Christmas. You just either stayed at home or you went round your auntie's on Boxing Day. But I never recall when I was at school. Anyway, what are you doing for Christmas? Oh, yeah, we're going to... when my kid goes to school, they're off to Malaysia for Christmas. Like, blimey. But really? You're going to Malaysia for Christmas? What are you doing? Oh, we're going to Thailand. Wow, that's amazing. You're 10. What are you doing? What's going on there? Nobody did that, really. They might have, might have stayed with a nan in... My friend had a... Growing up in Kent, my friend had a nan in Blackheath, which is an area of South London, for those who don't know. And I used to think it was amazing. I thought, really? Where is this mysterious place, Blackheath, that he's going to? That was about it. Nobody really went on the mooch over Christmas. Now, 29.3 million journeys will be made over the Christmas period, and 14.3 million of those will be over this weekend. That's definitely the time to travel late at night or early in the morning, isn't it? I mean, Simon mentioned about leaving at 6 a.m. I'd be gone by 4 a.m. If I was doing a 4 or 5, 6 hour with the kids in the car, you wouldn't see me for dusts. 4 a.m, bang, out the door. I'd be at the Costa drive-through before you knew it, several counties away from where I started. Thank you to Simon Calder. Let's go back to it. Your comments. This is Jason in Sheffield. We're talking Keir Starmer here. Jason, what are your thoughts? Afternoon to you.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Good as gold at this end. Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, well, I'm on about your what's Keir Starmer
biggest failure to date.
So
yeah. Where do you think he's really dropped a clanger?
Appointing his whole cabinet, basically.
Existing.
They're absolutely all useless. None of them know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if I can put another one in quickly.
Of course you can.
I said to our son, who's 77, that makes about 130.
Dick Van Dyke. Go on.
Yeah.
Your son, who's not 77, he's 17, right? 27. All right, he's got a 7 in it.
27.
All the good 7s. 27.
Yeah. And I said to him, if you look at the Labour front bench and Keir Starmer's appointments, it's like the cast of Fraggle Rock. And do you know what he said to me?
Go on.
He said to me, they're not like the cast of Fraggle Rock, because the cast of Fraggle Rock are professionals.
There you go, you see. There's something in another stratosphere from the cast of Fraggle Rock. This is beyond Muppet territory, right? I know I'm mixing Muppets and Fraggles there. That's a bit of a crime to do that. I know that.
It's way beyond
Muppetry.
Fraggle Rock and the Muppets, yeah. It's way beyond that. It's gone. It's over the horizon. and heading towards, I don't know, the sun or something.
Heading towards the sun, yeah. I'm going to ask you this, I've never asked anybody this, but you're with us, Jason. We've raised the issue. Who is your favourite Muppet?
My favourite Muppet?
When you were a kid, you know, the Muppet Show was on the telly.
Yeah.
Because everyone was a Kermit person, wasn't there? But I never trusted that green beast.
Yeah, it was a bit...
froggy.
Creepy, Kermit. And Miss Piggy was a bit... Miss Piggy was a bit trans, I think, but...
That's a good point. I think Miss Piggy might have been the original trans representative.
Yeah.
It was the emphasis on the Miss, you know, call me Miss. It's like, I'm a lady. You know, it's all of that territory, isn't it? I'm Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
I think you've really hit on something here, Jason.
Yeah,
and then there was
I don't really know.
the fella that played the drums. What was he called in the band? What was that?
Oh, it was... Oh, my God, you put me on the spot here, mate.
Zoot played the saxophone.
Yeah, it was... Was it... Oh, I can't remember.
We're going on a retro Muppet journey. It's our last show before Christmas. I think it's great that we're doing this, Jason. We're going retro. There's nothing wrong with TV retro.
Yeah.
Statler and Waldorf, the two old boys that sat in the box, they were very amusing.
Yeah.
But I always got the impression that one of them was probably on a list somewhere.
Yeah, it used to be a bit like the old...
He was called Animal, the drummer.
Animal, that was it. Yeah, it was Animal. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
He wasn't in it.
Coming up with this stuff, are you? Jesus, where are you dragging this stuff up from?
Listen, well, you mentioned Fraggles. The minute you went puppet bound,
no.
I'm afraid you opened up a can of worms in this department.
A can of Fraggles.
Can of Fraggles. I interviewed once, I kid you not, what was that? Was it called Avenue Q, that show that was in the West End, which was like Muppets, the puppets were Muppets type things. And a fella came in on the show when I was on TalkSport, Jason. He came in and he brought one of these Muppets with him. And it's impossible to interview him without addressing your questions to the Muppet. I didn't expect that.
That's annoying.
It's very annoying, because every time I wanted to ask... Because obviously the puppet's answering the questions, so you end up interviewing the puppet, which is a bit bizarre. Listen, Jason, you've been brilliant. Thank you, Jason in Sheffield, who took us down... Do you know what? This is what happens on phone-ins. If you are ever short of material, you just talk about retro TV. You pretend not to just listen out next time you hear it. You pretend not to remember something. By the way, we didn't do that with the Muppet thing. That was genuine. But you go, what was that show called? Sunday afternoon. It was about a horse. It was that the horse was black, and it used to do... What was it called? What was that called, that show? And then everybody phones in and goes, it's Black Beauty, wasn't it? You know, it's a white beauty as well, that horse. He used to do stuff. What was the other one with the kangaroo? The Australian thing. That was called Skippy. Skippy the bush kangaroo. What a fraud that kangaroo was, by the way. I found out there was 27 of them. I thought it was just one kangaroo that lived forever that did amazing things. So you go down, you open up that particular debate, and then you have a full switchboard, I promise you, for about 27 hours. And people going, here's one for... Do you remember Run Around with Mike Reed? That was brilliant. Run around now. That thing. The Muppets were in another league of brilliance, by the way, it should be said. Thank you to Jason. Voice of Doom. Here's a gear change again. Voice of Doom is on its way. We've got a voice that's on day 3. Nobody has got this so far. Stand by. We open it up next here on Talk.
Rachel Reeves' big danger now. She has so burdened and already over... You know, the tax burden was at the highest record level at the end of the Tory years. It wasn't low then. She's added to it now, and I think we're in a very dangerous position.
And quite scarily, the other day when Sir Keir Starmer himself was asked, does this mean you're not going to put up taxes again? He said, well, you know, I can't rule it out, which pretty much means, yes, we intend to.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. So, we've got the voice of doom. Are you all good with this, Jack? You're all right? We all know what we're doing with the voice of doom. OK, right. So this is... I was just talking to Jack, who's on the desk for us today, and he's not normally with us. He came into the building, stood outside, said, can I have a car sticker, please? And they went, are you free? And I went, OK, that's it. And he got a gig. That's how radio works, media students. Don't be buying all this. It's a wall you can't penetrate. Oh, you really can. We'll take anybody. 034... Not that Jack is anybody, I should add. 0344 499 1000. It's the voice of doom. So this is day 3, the mystery voice with a political feel to it. It's always a political voice. Have a listen to... Remember, it's a rollover. Day 3, here's the voice.
I believe that so strongly.
Who is that? Do not call in. There is no prize, but you can take part if you fancy it by messaging on the usual number 0344 499 1000. No, that's not right, is it? What is it? 87222. That's right. 87222. Message on that. Here's the voice again.
I believe that so strongly.
If we get the right answer inside the next 10 minutes, we will reveal all. If we don't, it rolls over to next Friday, which is the next time I'm back on. Here's the voice one more time.
I believe that so strongly.
Who is that? 87222. And hopefully we get a winner after the news at 3. Back to your calls. Norman is in Dartford. How you doing, Norm?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. What are your thoughts? Keir Starmer.
Regarding Starmer...
Yes.
Well, he just comes across disingenuous the whole time. But what shook me was the other week, we was down the golf club and we're all sitting around the table. We're all 70s and 80-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, what we say you couldn't put on the radio. You just couldn't do it.
I love the mischievous giggle in your voice as you said that was beautiful.
The morning after he switched on the Christmas tree lights at Downing Street.
Oh, that was a moment, wasn't it?
I mean, you know, well, that come up, and the ridicule of him was merciless.
Yeah.
Absolutely merciless.
Yeah.
And then I was quite shocked. When that died down, the people around there, now bear in mind they're all 70s and 80s, absolutely despise him.
Yep. More so than... So what about, like, if you can cast your mind back to 2010 or something, Norman, when David Cameron came in, if you were watching Cameron on the stage, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea, would the assessment have been similar?
No. I'm 80 odd now.
Sounding great,
I've never known anybody where any Prime Minister has been despised like him. People have never come up with it.
I'll tell you what's made this different is the speed with which it's happened, right? He's only been there since July the 4th. So the fact that in such a short period of time there is such... I mean, I think he's the most unpopular Prime Minister, certainly since the... I think Callaghan was the last one that was unpopular.
I think like that. But I was very surprised. Very surprised. It was a sort of universal thing. I mean, I've always despised him. I don't make no bones about that.
Yeah.
I've had him sussed out a long time ago. But he just... It was incredible.
Who would you like to see running the country, Norman?
would I like to see one.
Yeah. Is there a name out there you think, if only he or she was running the place, things would be tickety-boo?
No, I mean, I'm a bit of a Reform fan at the moment.
Okay.
But I just can't see anyone there capable of who I would want to run the country.
To actually run it,
You've got to have a team, haven't you?
Yeah, and then, the Reform team will expand, it will get bigger, and they will sort of ingrain themselves more at local levels.
They need to do. I mean, I think they've got some good ways about them, and they're petrifying everybody.
But you can't do it with one man, right?
No.
Which is essentially what they have. Listen, Norman,
this is how I see it, yeah.
Yeah, got it. You've been brilliant. Norman, thank you, mate. Have a great Christmas. Norman in Dartford, he's 80, and him and his mates don't go a bundle on Keir Starmer. Bit of breaking news, by the way. Sue Gray, remember Sue Gray? The civil servant who investigated Partygate, went on to become Keir Starmer's chief of staff, has just been jailed for being an utter chancer. That is not the breaking news. She has just been made a life peer. Nice work if you can get it, right? Have a job for half an hour, be forced to walk the plank because you're not very good, and then get given a guaranteed 300 quid, 350 quid a day job for the rest of your life. Sue Gray elevated to the House of Lords, essentially for the most, I think, public example of inadequacy we have seen in a long, long time. She's got a big gig. That's the latest. It is the voice of doom coming after the news. Hopefully we're going to get a winner. Will we get it? Or we will have a rollover. This is the voice you've got to identify.
I believe that so strongly.
Do not call in, there is no prize, but you can message in 87222 if you think you know who that is. If we get a right answer, we will bring you that on the other side of the news at 3 o'clock. If we don't, it rolls over to the next time we're back on air, which is a week today, next Friday. Right now, then, let's get the news headlines at 3 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Absolutely right. 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome back to the home of Common Sense. It's our final hour, but we are rammed to the gills at this end. Coming up, we are continuing to discuss that warning from the Bank of England that the economy is stagnating after Rachel Reeves' budget as businesses have responded by raising prices and, of course, cutting jobs. This is a terrible cocktail. It forces the question about Keir Starmer, his judgment, his leadership, and what is his biggest failure to date. We'll continue to take your comments on that. Also this afternoon, the NHS facing its worst December for flu admissions since 2021 as health leaders warn of a flood of cases that are worsened, of course, by family get-togethers leading up to Christmas. Are you sensing the sniffles? I certainly am. More on that as well. And Will Guyatt returns, our tech correspondent, with Christmas being 5 days away. Geeky gadgets aplenty. What has he got lined up for us today? We'll find out more. We are, I can tell you this much, going to talk a bit of advice for parents who are thinking or have already got their kid a smartphone. You got your kid a smartphone for Christmas? There might be some rules and regulations around what you want to do. How much information do you want on what they are looking at, what they're doing? I think if your kid's 10, 11, 12, I think you want a lot. How much control does a parent really have over their child's phone? It's genuinely and continuing to be a fascinating and, troubling conversation. Before we go back to the big flu question, the voice of doom. So just before the news, this is day 3, we played you the current mystery voice, the voice of doom. This is the voice.
I believe that so strongly.
Who is that? These were some of the wrong guesses. David Miliband, no. Jack Straw. Lots of people have been guessing Jack Straw. I can kind of see that, but it's not. Jeremy Corbyn, no. Peter Mandelson, the new ambassador, don't you know? No. Frank Field, it isn't. Rory Stewart, no. Matt Hancock, no. In fact, no one's got it right. I'm kind of so... Bearing in mind how whenever we do these, we have some really cryptic ones. We have foreign voices from, the German parliament, from American senators, people from way back in this country, and within a day or two, someone's guessed it correctly, and we are always slightly surprised. No matter how cryptic we go, there's always a winner. This one surprised me, but it rolls over to next Friday when we're back on air after Christmas. 3:05. Let's look at this story. The NHS facing its worst December for flu admissions since 2021. Health leaders are warning of a flood of cases. Part of the reason, of course, well, it's Christmas, it's winter, and people gather together quite a lot. The new NHS statistics, which reveal that hospital admissions for flu care in England increased by almost 40% in a single week, coming as several Welsh hospitals advise patients to avoid the illness while the large system is under increasing strain. Let's speak with Martin Gower, former NHS Trust Chair. Martin, good afternoon to you. I do feel, I can see some people's eyes rolling at this, going, oh, for God's sake, every single year. It's on the front pages, we talk about it. Hospitals are going to be busy because there's flu. What's different this year?
Good afternoon, Ian. I'm slightly concerned that my internet is fluctuating here. The BT Openreach are in my village doing something, but it could be that. So if I do suddenly go, you'll understand why.
Well, you're sounding and looking great, I should say, as ever. So
let's keep our fingers crossed.
Let's see how it goes.
OK, well, we have what I think they're calling a quad endemic. 4 different viruses, the flu, norovirus, of course, our good old friend COVID, and it's just ludicrous. RSV is the other one. We hear this every year.
Yeah.
And I think that you begin to lose patience with it. When I was in the NHS till June 2020, this was a big kind of project every autumn, working out what we were going to do with the extra demand. Healthcare isn't the only organisation that has fluctuating demand. I knew someone once who ran a toy shop, and he tended to have rather more demand at Christmas time than he did the rest of the year. it's something they don't seem to adjust to. For a small example of this, in my contract of employment for staff, I wouldn't allow any annual leave from the months of November to February. We can't afford to have people on leave at that time.
Yeah.
And yes, I would actually have a better, efficient way of dealing with people, triaging them when they arrived at A&E. And I think there are some hospitals who do rather well. It's like everything in the NHS. It fluctuates around the country. Some places it's awful, some it's kind of okay, and others do pretty well. I'm lucky where I live that the hospital seems to cope pretty well. But it's not acceptable. And the thing about it is that people then are saying, oh, well, we're doing lots of extra vaccinations, at football clubs and all sorts. That's not really the answer either. The flu vaccination this year, from what I've heard, isn't that good. It's only about 30% effective. So, it's hard to comment really. But there are things that the NHS could do and do better to really handle this huge extra demand.
It is, as you rightly say, it is. We have this every year. I think the headlines go back for as long as headlines have been written, or as long as we've been keeping data on this stuff. My doctor said to me, I went for a swift appointment the other day. He said, "Have you had a flu?" I haven't had a flu jab. I've never had a flu jab. Actually, Martin, there's no sort of political reason for that. I've just as you can tell just by looking at me, I'm a fit and healthy young buck, and I've worked on that basis I've worked on the basis that long may that continue. But he did point out that he was exceptionally busy this year.
Yes, yeah. And other people I know have gone to their own GP surgeries and been to the hospitals, and they've been very quiet for this time of the year.
Interesting.
But every year, NHS England asks all trusts to produce a winter plan. That is now extended to what they call the ICBs, the Integrated Care Boards, and it's their job now to submit the plan. The trouble is, a lot of time is spent in the NHS about planning, but none of the plans really seem to work that well. And I just think that there is a huge need for additionally look at what needs to happen during this period. You need to be fully staffed. You need to have everything as streamlined as you can. The ambulance service is not performing particularly well at the moment, and that adds to the problem. They're telling people, some of the ambulance services, that you probably won't get an ambulance if you feel terribly ill. So either drive yourself to hospital or get somebody to drive you there and take you to A&E. We still get time wasters coming to A&E, which clog up the system. I mean, there was the famous incident in the Midlands where somebody turned up at one of the A&Es, a lady did, because she had a broken nail. And then you've got the point, in addition to that of course, the primary care services don't really work. There's very few walk-in centres where you can, day or night, 7 days a week, walk in and at least see a well-qualified nurse. In other countries, that tends to happen. If you go to the A&E, you're referred there by a primary care practitioner. Unless you're really critical, but that's the way it should work. So it's become an alternative, because people can't get to see the GP. They can't get proper community service at home. So what do? They rock up at the A&E.
While you're with us, Martin, it's worth asking this question as well. Another story, 7 in 10 of the lowest paid NHS workers forced to pay to park their cars. This has been another long-running debate. Should NHS workers pay the parking fee in their own place of work's car park? We know that the NHS collected 70 million quid in charges from staff. Porters right up to doctors and nurses affected by this. NHS staff in the North West paid the most, nearly £15 million. North East and Yorkshire, £14.5 million. There's a lot of money in this, but it always seems to be a massive injustice that you would ask a nurse to pay to park in their own place of work. Or am I wrong on this?
I have a friend who's a senior oncology nurse. She was having to park in Tesco's and then have a fold bike to bike herself in the rest of the way. I mean, it's iniquitous, actually, Ian. It shouldn't happen. I'm very proud of the fact that the trust I last chaired, we didn't charge anybody for parking, neither staff nor patients. And now, there was a good thing about that too, because there were limited parking spaces where we were. So the earlier you got into work, the better, more likely you were.
Nobody was late. Nobody was late for work in that hospital, were they? That was the great thing. Everybody was there vying for the spaces. Listen, Martin, it's been great. Your broadband held up perfectly. Martin Gower, former NHS Trust chairman, with us on the programme. I don't know what you do about that when you say to somebody, because I do get it. I get this bit. You cannot ask a nurse or a doctor or a porter to pay to park in their own workplace. The counter to that is that not everybody is front-facing who works in the NHS, and therefore not every company that you work for if you work for the insurance company down the road, they might only have 4 parking spaces but employ 200 people. So not everybody's got a car park. It's not always a right to have a place. But the idea that, you're saving somebody's life, but you've got to nip out and feed the meter because you've gone over your 3 hours is just a bit balmy. You'd never make car parks big enough, really, would you? Because, even in small hospitals, hundreds, if not thousands of people work within them. And some of the largest ones, goodness me, they're absolutely vast staff forces. Tony in Doncaster says, happy Christmas to everyone there at talkTV and Talk Radio. Keir Starmer, the biggest disappointment with Keir Starmer and his government for me is the deceit that he and other cabinet members practiced prior to and since becoming the government. I've been around long enough not to expect anything from Labour when they succeeded in a failed Conservative government. Previously, they'd always inherited a full treasury, which has enabled them to pursue their policies. This time, there was nothing left, and they've foundered ever since to our cost. My salvation, apart from being a new Reform Party member, is the royal family. They are and remain our one true compass in life. As in past years, my wife and I will be travelling down from Yorkshire to Sandringham to see the royals, walking to and from the church. That's amazing that you do that each year. And I'm really pleased to hear that as well, Tony. Christmas Day is my wife's birthday, and it's part of our celebrations to go. Thank you to all and all your colleagues for giving us a voice. We will need it even more in 2025. You might be right about that. Let's get another voice from Ian in London. Ian, how are you doing?
Hi, Ian, and a happy Christmas to all of you there as well. You've definitely brightened up my year.
That's good to hear.
Can I just say there's actually 2 failures.
Go on.
With Keir, right? Keir Starmer is not a failure. He has achieved the greatest con in living history. He conned 30 million people to vote for Labour with no intention of actually doing anything they actually said they were going to do.
That's not bad work, is it, if you can get it? I mean, it's quite an achievement, that.
It's quite achievement. And the greatest failure is Sunak allowing Starmer to get to that point.
Yeah.
If Rishi had sort of tried to manoeuvre it and hopefully even tried to go through to October, there was a good chance.
Yeah, I mean, they could have reduced some of it, but I think with Rishi, I think it was. I sense it was all about the boats and Rwanda, wasn't it? I think they thought, well, we might get it off the ground, but it will make such little difference, and we'll have increased that. We'll be sending 30 people on a flight to Rwanda, which is worse than sending no people in a way, because it looks like an abject failure. And I wonder whether he knew that and thought, let's do it now, because this thing's going to get worse by October.
But the only thing to it all was that, quite simply, yes, I don't think it was going to stop Starmer's con artists working, but the majority that he's got has allowed him to have this 4.5 years more of this prison sentence we're going to have. God knows what's going to happen at the end of it, because I really, as most probably you would think about it and anybody sensible, I don't know who could win the next election.
What if something weird happened, Ian? Like, this Ed Miliband's scheme of, getting windmills up in just about anywhere where there's a space and solar panels.
Not going to happen.
I agree with you, but what if it did work? What if it worked and we suddenly go, wow, we actually energise and fuel our country with wind and sun. It's actually worked. So fair play. Because I said the other day, if it works, then brilliant. We'd all like a bit of... I know it's not going to be free, but, it's going to be a very different system. I don't think it can work for a number of reasons. But if it did, is that the sort of miracle they need to turn things around?
No. The only miracle they need is all of a sudden the hospitals work, that there's less sort of stress on that, and that, as you just said, the guy that was just on a couple of minutes ago, that people that phone for an ambulance, like with a 999 call, get an ambulance within 5 to 10 minutes.
100%.
Not 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with windmills and everything else. That's like is it the man of La Mancha?
Yeah.
Fighting the windmills. That's not going to do it. What is going to do it is that when the kids go to school, they get taught in English. When they go to get anything, it's there. That their own sort of needs are taken care of.
And also, not everything goes up in price in such a spectacular fashion. Your car... I just renewed my car insurance last night. Almost doubled. No reason. It's just almost doubled. My council tax, I'll get that in the new year. That will go up as well. My water bills are going up. My energy, the gas, is going up. My mobile phone rate has just gone up. It's that, right? And if you add it all together over the course of a year, and if you've got a smaller budget, then that's tricky. No one ever said, oh, look, the cost of gas has halved. Never happened.
It's like Royal Mail. I do a lot of stuff on eBay. Royal Mail have got it sort of like tied up. They actually put the prices up in November and December, saying we've got to get extra staff in. Now, that sounds very similar to what your guy just said about the toy shop. They know in January, February that they're going to have to take more staff. But why do they put the prices up in just for November, December? Why don't they do a little bit throughout the year to make that they're going to have extra staff? And that's for the pleasure to say that we'll make sure that your items you sent out get delivered within 24 or 48 hours. And it still doesn't.
Yeah,
It still doesn't.
We're in a funny old place. Ian, great call. Lovely passion as well. Ian down there in London. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. I think that's one of the issues, isn't it? It's the sense that we know prices have always gone up, but I honestly think that some companies are putting things up in price because we're all expecting them to. So they're almost fulfilling the obligation. They go, well, everyone's talking about stuff going up. We might as well put ours up. We don't need to, but we just will. And why would your car insurance double? Just shy of doubling. Well, what's all that about? Why would it do that? Why am I paying just a random company to insure a car? Oh, we'll double the price. And I could have gone on the search and, I've done it many times. Every now and again you find a bargain, you get it slightly lower, but I don't think it would have been much different on this one. There's sort of much of a muchness going on. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
For a move to suggest that we're going to see a coalition of the willing moving into providing training inside Ukraine. Of course, we provide at the moment under Operation Interflex. That's an international operation based in the UK, bringing Ukrainian troops or Ukrainian civilians out of Ukraine, training them in to become basic soldiers and then sending them back to Ukraine. Logistically, it would be so much better if it could happen inside Ukraine. But there's a lot that has to be put in place.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. That is where we are. Stand by. We've got Will Guyatt with us in a few moments' time. We are talking tech. Some big stories there. Particular advice as well for parents. If you've bought your kid a smartphone for Christmas, and thousands of people would have done exactly that, what are the rules and regs around it? How do you keep your eye on what they're looking at? Can you monitor it? How good is that monitoring? I mean, parental controls. What does that really mean in reality? You can't stop and go on the internet, can you? Or can you? Back to your calls. David is in Manchester. Reference Keir Starmer. David, good afternoon to you.
Oh, hi, good afternoon to you. First of all, can I wish you and your staff Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, not holiday.
Indeed, that's very kind, and to you as well, David. Thank you.
Yeah, Keir Starmer, the worst thing he's done, he keeps walking away from defence. Over a third of the world is at war at the moment, especially in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
We can give £20 billion for a hole in the ground for so-called eco-capture.
Yep.
It doesn't work. People have tried it. They've proven it doesn't work. We can give billions away to foreign countries who have their own space programs. We can give other money to other things.
Yeah.
And yet, our defence system, in my day, I am an ex-serviceman, we had 5 ordnance factories producing armaments for this country. We're down to 1. If we went back building our defence industry, that would provide jobs, well-paid jobs. It would give us security. And all we get from this Labour government is somewhere down the line they don't see the trees for the woods. And it scares me because we'll push over for anybody.
Doesn't sound that different, does it, to the last Conservative government? I mean, I think, didn't Boris reduce foreign aid a little bit, but not by much?
Yes.
But it's very, we just sent 50 million to Syria, I think. I think there's other countries we're sending millions to help adapt to climate change. And I'm not saying that all of these causes aren't, in an ideal world, we'd be doing all sorts of things. But we're not in an ideal world. We've got people living on the streets. We've got elderly people who can't pay their energy bill. And all the while that is the case, you don't send millions of pounds elsewhere, right? I mean, that's...
No, you shouldn't.
You wouldn't teach a kid to do that, would you? You wouldn't say, this is good economics.
This cap and captures took over the government.
Yeah.
That money, if we use the oil, the gas and the coal that we have for at least, say, 10, 15, possibly 20 years to give our industry the fuel, cheap energy, because we've got the highest energy in the world, and build our factories. We have no... anywhere in this country now that produces heavy steel to produce tanks and ships. We don't have an ordnance supply to resupply even our own basic ammunition for this country. If we got back into that, because they can't see what's coming.
Yeah.
China's on the rise. North Korea and Russia want to join with them. And we're just sitting there saying, well, somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
And to me, as an ex-serviceman, I speak to lots of other ex-servicemen, and they all worry where we're going with this, because at the moment, might as well... Do you remember the white paper with Neville Chamberlain, Peace in Our Time?
The waving of the white paper, of course. I don't remember it at the time, I should just add.
Well,
This is the way we're going.
Maybe you do, David. Listen, it's a great point. Thank you. Really appreciate that. David in Manchester, and many of you picking up basically on the rather obvious fact that there is money to send to Ukraine, to Syria, to Africa, to China, to Pakistan, but not for our own elderly. Jonathan is down in London. Jonathan, on that issue of foreign aid, I think, what are your thoughts on this?
Indeed, and good afternoon, and to you and all your listeners as well. Ditto, ditto. Have a wonderful Merry Christmas, and let's have a good New Year as well.
Spot on. Thank you very much.
Right, okay, basically, when I was at school, I didn't get my maths O-level because I could not equate to simultaneous equations, etc., etc. I still can't. I still don't understand it. But simple arithmetic, I do indeed. Now, I'm not the Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not an economist as such, but this £22 billion so-called black hole, which Keir Starmer, his microchip in the back of his neck seems to be stuck. He goes, 22 billion black hole, 22. He repeats it like an incessant robot. No, non-stop. And it's a bit like when you're, for somebody my age, you're trying to contact an organisation online and you go onto a bot and you don't realise it's a bot. And then when it starts to not answer your question, you feel that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I feel every time I watch Parliament.
Yeah.
Now, OK, I won't take you around the houses. Let me get to the point. The £22 billion black hole, our pensioners are not getting their fuel allowance. £22 billion black hole. These ladies born in the 50s in this country, they were promised to be compensated for their pensions by the Labour government. They're not getting it. £22 billion black hole. Right, simple arithmetics. This year alone, since the spring, we have sent £7.8 billion to the Ukraine for military aid, and we have sent £5 billion in non-military aid, whatever that means. And every year we give £5 billion in foreign aid. So over 2 years, it comes to £10 billion.
Yeah.
So that is £22.8 billion. When I look at this government, I'm in my 60s now. This is the first time in my life that I feel sick, I feel aggressive.
Yep.
I have intrusive thoughts about these evil people, I'm saying, in government. There's something going on, something very disturbing, and the sooner I just hope something good comes out.
Do you know what, Jonathan? Can I just add to what you're saying? What's particularly bothering about this? You wouldn't even have to cancel foreign aid forever if they were worried about being seen as nasty. They would just have to put it on hold for a bit, right? They have to say, right, look, we're going to just put it on. In fact, you wouldn't have to get rid of all of it. You'd go, right, we're going to mark out the very, very most desperate places where we are very proud to help, and we'll reduce it from 12 billion to 2 billion for 3 years. And in that 3 years, we will save 30 billion, and there's your black hole.
Yeah, but, and even that, we don't have to worry about being perceived by people abroad as being mean or nasty or whatever. We're the most forgiving. I can't think of the words here.
No, I get it.
Tolerant society probably in the world.
I hear what you're saying, but if it was a case of like playing a bit of a diplomatic game and genuinely saying, look, there's some pretty tricky areas around the globe, we don't mind chipping in. You just wouldn't have to chip in the full amount. You could just say, let's have a little moratorium on foreign aid for a bit, and then once things are tickety-boo, once we're back in shape, once we've sorted everything else, the heating is on, the homeless are housed, we've got things back, and the queues at the NHS have stopped, then we can consider where we give our money elsewhere. Listen, Jonathan, on that point, we have to finish. Thank you. It's a great call. Jonathan sounded exasperated. He sounded genuinely disturbed by the country he's now living in, and I think a lot of people share that. Catherine in Cardiff reference a previous caller, Mark. She says, Mark has just perfectly articulated my view of the establishment and how we are now able to see what it's up to. Before COVID, although always interested in politics, I was a rule follower and believed that what governments told me. I shall be 69 in a few days' time and now describe myself as an anarchist, says Catherine. Yeah, we'll see you at that protest with your banner. Catherine, thank you for that. Great comments coming in from you. We are going to talk tech in a couple of moments. How the world of technology, which used to just dominate geeky pages in specific magazines, now finds itself on the front pages. And there's a lot to get through. Particularly, how do you monitor as a parent a smartphone? If you bought your kid one for Christmas, how are you going to work out what they're doing and what they're watching? Are there rules and regs you can put in place? And how effective are they? Will Guyatt is our man. He joins us next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 4. Let's talk technology. Will Guyatt, our tech correspondent, is with us. Afternoon to you, Will.
Afternoon, Ian. How you doing? Happy Christmas.
Yeah, happy
it's not
Christmas
too early
to you.
to say that.
Oh, look, the old specks of doom are back again. They
back.
disappeared for 1 week only. But
by popular demand, my glasses are back.
By popular demand, yes, from I don't know who. Before we get into stuff, it is worth just talking about online. I mean, certainly with kids and smartphones, online sort of protections, if you like. It's Christmas. There will be thousands of people in this country buying their kids a smartphone. Now, you could go the Nokia route. I've discovered, we're not buying our little one a phone just yet, but he's in that ballpark in his 12th year coming up where, you know, that's when kids ask for, you know, a smartphone and their mates have got one. It became a bit of a thing round our neck of the woods, and I'm sure elsewhere, that you got your kid a Nokia and said, you know, enjoy that. The problem is not everybody played the same game. Kids, you know, my little boy's mate said he's got a Nokia, but if he ever uses it, he has to do it when no one can see him. He's just so aware, acutely aware of the levels of embarrassment and ridicule that he will get. So he hides in a bush to call his mum or dad because he doesn't want anybody to see his Nokia. Now, I know Nokias have upped their game a little bit, but Nonetheless, it ain't a smartphone. It's not your Samsung or your Apple. So, and a friend of mine said this the other day. He said the minute, my little boy goes to secondary school from next year, the minute he gets on a school bus and pulls out a Nokia when they're all sitting there with an iPhone or a Samsung, he said, that's it, he's dead. He's dead in the water. So there is a peer game to be played, I suppose. So with all of that in mind, regardless, we do know parents will have their own ideas on that, but some kids will be getting smartphones. But how do you monitor them? There's never been more headlines about this. Channel 4, I think it was, or Channel 5 did a documentary the other day about this. Lots of concern at what kids are looking at. Can you fully protect what your children are viewing, Will?
No, not fully. That's where I would start. And I'd say that anybody buying any kind of tech for kids this Christmas should consider looking at the available parental controls before they give the device, the games console, the tablet, the laptop, the smartphone to a child. Because when you suddenly decide on December the 28th that your child has turned into a wild beast and you want to control what they're doing, you'll never get the genie back in the bottle. So do that research before. Unwrap the item, set the item up, get some help to set the item up if you need to. You'll find tons and tons of really, really useful guides on the internet to set up parental controls on whatever device you've got. Far too complicated and far too many different devices for me to talk you through them right now. But if it's games consoles you're looking for, go to askaboutgames.com and they've got setups for all of the consoles, all the PlayStations, Nintendo Switch, Xbox. And if you go to some of the internet organizations like Safer Internet Centre, which is uksaferinternet-centre.org, and some of the other online sites and services, you'll find examples for smartphones and devices. Now, you can pay for a service if you really, really want to track and protect a child online. Those services are not cheap. They're typically around about £15 to £20 a month, but you can message who they're calling. You can monitor who they're calling, who they're messaging. You can find out where they are via GPS, reporting back from the phone. You can get reports about how many hours they've been using the device for. You can control which apps are being used. So you can use a service like Custodio for that, and that's Custodio, Custodio. And there's another one which is called Parentala, which is parent, ALER at the end. They're both subscription services available for Google phones and for phones with Android and for Apple's devices too. Or, like what I'm going to do when my daughter gets to the age where we give her a smartphone. She's 6 at the moment, Lola, and there's no chance she's getting a smartphone for a long time. I'll sit down and start having a conversation with her about the responsible use of technology, the fact that there are some absolute dodgepots online, and the fact that anything she experiences there online, no matter what anybody else tells her, she can always come and talk to her parents or her aunties or uncles, whoever she wants to talk about being safe. So it's about having a conversation about safety and letting kids know that no matter what anybody else is telling them online, they can still come to mum, dad or whoever to report something if it's something that they're not happy with.
I was just going to say, one of the problems, though, when you listen to some of those anecdotal stories, lots of the parents where their child did go down the wrong path, and maybe with tragic consequences, perhaps they were just lost for a few years. A lot of those parents said, we did all of that. We had all the stuff in place. But the power of the internet is so great. We talked about this the other day. It's all very well saying, let's get rid of social media for kids under 16. That's great. What about the internet? There's the internet. You can look at social media on the internet as well, by the way. So it doesn't stop that. I can go to X on Safari or,
Yeah, of course you can. And just for the record, there are some tragic stories we hear about people and young kids online, and we hear them at all times of the year.
Yep.
There's also loads and loads and loads of absolutely fantastically incredible stories about the internet and what it's done for young people with interests and passions that we don't talk about because they're just normal everyday life now, and that stuff gets ignored. So it's about having a balance. If you're going to give a child a smartphone, you really need to set the boundaries before before you give it them and ensure that you stick to them. The number of people I know who've set up parental controls and then, they've been trying to do something in the kitchen and they've given their child their PIN number to their device and then wondered why on earth that said child has gone and spent 65 quid on dragon hats or whatever for the game that they're currently playing. I think it's far too easy at the moment to say, oh, the tech companies have developed something so addictive and so evil, and that keeps parents out of having to do anything in terms of controlling and protecting kids online. Like in Australia, for example, they keep saying we're going to protect generations of Australian kids from tech companies. And how about parents step up a little bit too? I know it's not easy. I'm already experiencing it with a 6-year-old who wants devices and wants more time on her Kindle, her Amazon Kids tablet and all these kind of things. But I just think it's one of those things that you have to debate as a society and get school help if you need it, because they can talk about online safety at school these days, and just make kids realize that it's not something that you go and take to your bedroom. Technology, if you're going to use it, is something that you use in the front room or with parents around.
And we have talked, it's all very well. There's a phone called Pinwheel, isn't there, which is a kid's phone, looks like a smartphone, but there's no internet on it, let alone social media. You can't go online. You can message, so it obviously allows you via a SIM to do that, but it doesn't. You have no internet. Now, I can only imagine that even though, your kid opens it up, because the peer pressure is a factor in some of this, your kid opens it up, it looks like an iPhone, you tell them it's not actually an iPhone, but it does something similar, and then they realise that, it's got its own apps, and that's great. I can listen to music, I can take photographs, it does all of that, but there's no internet. I can't even search up what's the capital of Italy. Would that not, at some point, I think that kid's going to go, well, nice try, Mum and Dad, but this ain't going to cut it. You essentially bought me a posh Nokia.
I don't disagree with you, and peer pressure is real. But my one wish for 2025 is we obviously know of some very tragic cases that have existed, but most of what we get about attitudes and people's behaviour, and there's no actual data related to online usage and social media usage. There's no evidence. It's all anecdotes at the moment, and my mate's done this, or this kid on the school bus has done X, Y or Z. I'd either like the government or tech companies to pony up some cash, and let's have this argument and this conversation once and for all. Survey the country, find out what the damage is, and then work out how we're going to fix it.
There it is. We are going to talk Chinese Wi-Fi and Apple's AI in a moment, but briefly on this one, if you could, Will, because I want to get all this in. Elon Musk is back at #1 on your list. What's he been doing? What's the story here?
Right, this bloke is a terror to society and a danger to the world.
It's a bit harsh. He speaks so well of you, Will.
No, because Donald Trump is not even in power, and because Elon Musk has posted over 100 and something tweets, zeets, posts, whatever you want to call them, in the last week, suggesting that Congress should slow down funding and ban funding for government departments because of waste. All the funding for US governmental departments has been put on stop until after Trump comes in. Now, that's a problem if you're somebody in the US who's looking for funding between now and the 29th of January. And Elon Musk is not in power. Elon Musk is not elected. Nobody has voted for Elon Musk. But Elon Musk repeatedly posting about it on his platform has caused so many people to call US Congress members that they've all capitulated and they've all rolled in and they've refused this funding. Now, some people are going, brilliant, you don't like it, woke guy. But Elon Musk is not in control of Parliament, even though he has a role in Trump's administration.
He's a businessman, though, isn't
it's
he?
not
He's
a
businessman, and
well,
he's allowed to speak. He's allowed to go, look, I know how a business runs.
Ian, you do not come onto this station every day and call for the government in the Democratic Republic of Congo to be deposed. You don't do that. It's not something that you do. Why is Elon Musk interfering in the interests of different countries? He's interfering in the interests of the UK, where he's not a resident. He's obviously very, very, very pally with Donald Trump. I don't know who will drop who first in that particular instance, whether Elon Musk will realise that Donald Trump's not useful to him, or Donald Trump will realise he has to drop Elon Musk because of the danger to his future political career. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. But Elon Musk is not in control. He should not be doing what he's doing.
Well, there was, one Reform MP said in 2018 when people questioned George Soros donating money, said he doesn't live here, he doesn't pay taxes here, what right has he got to interfere with our democracy? And that came from Richard Tice back in 2018.
Money talks.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Richard would say, actually, they are different things, and maybe they are. I don't know. But nonetheless, I mean, I think we have to be wary of rich people bearing gifts when it comes to them coming from not just another jurisdiction, but possibly to be part of another government in another country. We'll watch with interest. Will, stay with us. More coming from Will Gart in just a couple of moments right here on Talk.
We're talking about someone here who is a serious crime boss, dealing in drugs. What about the families which have suffered as a result of his activities? And it's been claimed that if he was to return to Turkey, he may well suffer persecution. An immigration tribunal heard that he had returned to his homeland at 8 separate occasions. We have a dysfunctional asylum system, and we also have a human rights framework which doesn't prioritise the safety and security of the law-abiding British public.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Graham says, is Will Gart on to talk about tech or make political statements? It's clear where he stands politically. I should add that Will co-wrote the Reform Party's manifesto, so he's not exactly a lefty. So where he stands, how about asking him to stick to his day job? Will, stop pontificating. I mean, it is very hard.
Stick to my day job. How about you stick it where the sun don't shine? I am absolutely entitled to talk about technology and the role and the view of politics in technology.
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true.
For you to say it's not in my realm of discussion,
I'm not saying that, Will.
Stuff.
I'm not saying that. Graham's saying that. Graham's saying that. Blame Graham, not me. Don't blame me. Do not blame me. Don't ever blame me. Blame Graham.
You did not listen to me then. I was telling Graham to get stuffed.
Tell Graham, don't tell me.
Yeah, get stuffed, Graham. I'm not having that. I will do what I want to do. It's my career. It's my choice. If you don't like it, get me fired. Thank you.
There you go. And you can start that campaign at government.org/Will Guyatt should be fired.
You only need 100,000 votes and you can get me sacked from Talk.
Careful what you wish for, Will. Listen,
Happy Christmas.
Apple AI is in. I've been having a fiddle around with Apple AI. It's a bit gimmicky. Doesn't really do that much. I don't need an email summarised.
That's because you're not using it properly. I think what's
makes me some little funky emojis, but
I know you enjoy the emojis, but I think it will come into effect over the next few years. It will get more effective. And somebody like you, Ian, a modern metropolitan executive, multiple jobs, business everywhere, it should be quite useful for you with all those email addresses and aliases you've got.
If you said it, indeed, yes. Mickey Smithers, as I'm known when I finish it for.
Big Jeff.
What is I do wonder, we've talked about this before, what is AI and what is just technology? There's a lot of stuff that's just new tech that's all being called AI. What, if you had to say, what Apple have done with their latest update, which has an AI element to it, what would you say is the best thing on it right now?
I'm really impressed with what you can do with the camera. So you can walk down your local high street, you can take a photo of a restaurant you like the look of, press a button, it will find automatically information about that place, including reviews, when it's open, menu, all of that kind of stuff, just by analysing the photo that you have taken on your phone. So that is pretty clever. The other thing that's really good quickly is that it is linked to ChatGPT. You can set it up to ChatGPT, and unlike if you had your own personal ChatGPT account away from your iPhone, it won't share all of the information that you're putting into ChatGPT and use it to train the platform. It remains confidential to you and Apple, not to OpenAI, who are using whatever information you put into there to try and train their artificial intelligence.
How do you, when you say you can link it to ChatGPT, to do what?
So it can pick up from where Siri finishes at the moment. So you could ask Siri a really tricky question like, what is Ian Collins' real age? You could ask that to ChatGPT and it would come up with, I'm sure, a very interesting and accurate answer.
So I just go in settings, do I, and say link to ChatGPT?
Yeah, you go and log in and link it into your account. And anybody who's already done it, tell us what Ian Collins' real age is if you've got ChatGPT linked to your
It begins with a 3. I think we all know that. Yes. Listen, final one on Chinese Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about this because I've got my entire house is linked up with the exact company that are under this investigation at the moment, and they're likely to get a ban in the US. Some of this is kind of China-phobia. There's this concern about China's influence and power over tech. You and I have said on a billion occasions, if we're going to get serious about this in the West, we've got to get rid of everything and we've got to start making it all over here. But the latest iPhone, for example, more Chinese than any iPhone ever before. So it's all very well saying China are bad, but the China are good when they make the things that we want them to make. But this is a company called TP-Link who make Wi-Fi routers, all kinds of technology for Wi-Fi.
We've got one in the house. We don't use it as the main thing, but it exists as a kind of mechanism to get Wi-Fi elsewhere.
Booster extender. Yeah. Now, what's been happening is there's been examples of where these devices have been compromised, seemingly by Chinese hackers, to cause attacks on various networks around the world. So they have been utilized. People's home routers have been utilized to put stress on government assets, those kind of things, by bombarding them with traffic. So inadvertently, Ian, you become part of the hacking army. And that's happened with a couple of examples. And there's been a couple of stories where this has happened with TP-Link devices. So it looks as though Trump may well ban the company from having a license to operate in the US.
Brilliant. Listen, we've got around about 30 seconds or thereabouts, Will. We've talked gadgets a lot this year. In the build-up to Christmas, we've been doing sort of Christmas gadgets. Of all the ones we've done over the course of this year, give us one of your favourites. I know, and I've got a funny feeling it involves making tea.
Yeah, the most bonkers thing, this Ember Smart Mug, which we've talked about, it's a mug that is about 150 quid, and it'll keep your cup of tea at perfect temperature control for several hours. This is now sold out in most places, Ian. Wow. It's so popular this Christmas. People want it because the idea of having a cup of tea next to you that's perfectly temperature controlled for several hours is proving quite appealing to people if they're working from home or back in the office. So
what about a flask?
Well, yeah, but a flask doesn't temperature control. You cannot say to a flask, dial it up or dial it down a little bit. Well, you might be able to. I don't know what you've got saved in your flask, but maybe you might be able to. But yeah, that's why this device, this cup, has become really popular. Now, Amazon have had another delivery of them, and there are still some available in Apple stores, but many other places are now sold out.
Wow. And so but you've got to keep charging the mug up, right?
Yeah, you charge the mug up, yeah, absolutely, and it keeps your tea or coffee nice and warm. Beautiful. What is there not to like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, often, but you also want to drink it, don't you? So you don't want it to be, as hot as it is all the time to start with. Otherwise, you'd never drink it.
But you set it to the perfect temperature for your lips, for however you want to drink it, Ian. You can set it to whatever degree you fancy it. I know you like it pretty lukewarm, but you can have it at a constant lukewarm temperature for several hours. Why not?
There it is. Will, thank you. Have a cracking Christmas, Will.
Cheers,
thank
Ian.
you very much, Will Guyatt, our tech correspondent. Peter Cardwell's here.
Are you a minute and a half away from your Christmas holidays?
Yeah, I think I am, yes. Absolutely, yeah. Got a bit of a shindig to go to with the neighbours.
OK, nice.
Yeah, meeting up for a bit of food beforehand somewhere else. There's a lot going.
Excellent.
Yeah, a lot happening. Parcels to deliver, elf duties.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah.
Excellent.
What's happening, Peter, after 4?
23 million people are making a journey today. It's Frantic Friday, so we're talking about that.
Where are they going? Where's everybody going?
Just to see your driving home for Christmas, as Chris Ray said.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots happening. Also, there are people talking openly about Keir Starmer perhaps not leading Labour into the next election. Very interesting one there. And he has nominated a load of new members of the House of Lords. He wanted to abolish it at one stage.